strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you, Sheila. Madam Clerk, introduction of any addendum or delegation items?
They're done this evening.
Thank you. Confirmation of the agenda. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Wells, Councillor Bagu. Any questions to the agenda? All those in favor? That's carried. Any disclosures of interest this evening? Adoption of minutes, the regular meeting of Committee of the Whole, 02-20, held on January 27th, 2020. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Bodnar, Councillor Clayliff. Any questions? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Determination of items requiring separate discussion. I'll start on my right this evening. Councillor Wells.
1, 2, 4, and 5.
1, 2, 4, and 5. Councillor Wells, Councillor Wells. Councillor Bagu. Councillor.
Items 1 and 2.
Okay. Covered? Okay. Thank you, Councillor. And can I get a mover and a seconder for all the other items? Councillor Danch, Councillor Bruno, any questions? All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. We have one presentation this evening. We have Bill Myers, Customer Service Project Coordinator, is going to talk to us about our Customer Relationship Management Project update. Welcome. And the clerk.
Thought I'd join this presentation.
That's perfect.
I prefer not to be in front of the microphone, but I have to. So Bill and I are here today to give a customer service update. It's been a year since I started with the project, and I promised an update to let you know how we're spending the money. So when I started here in 2018, I noticed that there were some challenges with customer service. We had just gone to an automated phone system, and to be honest, it wasn't going over so well. What I noticed, though, is that we have some really great staff here. I noticed that staff provide really great customer service one-on-one, but actually connecting those residents to that staff is the challenge. So I've been working over this year to focus on customer service, to improve service delivery throughout the city. It's a cross-department, cross-corporate initiative that we're working on. 2019 was planning. So we worked on software, hardware updates, getting quotes, looking at other municipalities, working on RFPs. But the one thing I noticed very quickly was that this was too big for current capacity of staff. We needed a dedicated resource in order to make this timely. So the best thing I've done on this project so far is hired Bill. He came in the fall. He hit the ground running, and he has made sure this project is moving forward and moving in a timely manner, connecting all the different departments, making them work together. So I'm going to hand it over to him now so he can talk about what we've been doing and where we're going in 2020.
Thanks, Amber. So I'll begin the presentation tonight. I don't want everyone to be alarmed, but I'm going to start this presentation off with a statistic. So what I've found right from the beginning, as what the corporation and council had suspected, 60% of the customers that we have polled would not recommend our services to a friend or a colleague. Now, I don't want everybody to be alarmed by that stat, but why is this important for us? We never had a benchmark to work off of before. And Now what we've been able to do by establishing an initiative such as the customer satisfaction survey, it's allowed us as an organization to begin to benchmark some of these statistics in order for us to see if some of the strategies that we're trying to implement to improve customer service are actually working. So the agenda for tonight, going to give a quick overview of the project, the customer relationship management project. Also going to talk about the scope of this project. I think it's important to have to highlight the guiding principles for this project and what's guiding the administration through the delivery of this project. Going to talk about some of the milestones and major deliverables that we're looking to achieve as an organization. Going to talk about the work breakdown structure, so how we're organizing all of the work tasks related to the delivery of this project. Going to talk about the allocation of budget related to this project. Also going to touch briefly on change management plan, so what mitigating actions as an organization we're taking to ensure that we deliver this project on time. Going to talk about our risk management that we've taken into consideration at a high level. Also going to highlight some of the achievements that the organization has made related to this project from 2019 and going into this year, and going to talk about the next steps. So what are the projects that we're working on and we're trying to get through. So a quick overview. As we're aware, where this project had stemmed from was the approval of the CAO's report 2019-69. This was the report that highlighted the organization receiving municipal modernization funding in order for the city to modernize its service delivery. From there, and the receiving of this grant, we've been able, as Amber had mentioned, we've began to lay down and really take a tactical project approach. Really wanted to make sure that we were organized and in ensuring that we were able to accurately track the timeliness and the delivery of this project. And based off of the conditions set out in the municipal modernization grant, as well as the recommendations highlighted in the CAO's report related to the modernization grant funding, we were able to narrow down the scope of this project to 3 guiding principles. Those 3 guiding principles being ensuring that we're modernizing our service delivery, making sure that any projects that we're looking to implement, that we do it with the idea of making sure that we reduce future cost to the organization and to the taxpayers. And we also want to ensure that we're maintaining and improving frontline services. Those were 3 of the guiding principles that we've been looking to during the scope of this project. So some of the milestones and major deliverables that we've achieved so far. November 27th was a big day for us. That was the day that we had implemented the call center and began answering live calls for the organization. We are looking for February 2020 for the implementation of new corporate branding, which will be important for us as hitting that milestone feeds into multiple projects later in the year. So having that in place will be important. We also look to May 2020 for a go live of a CRM software. The CRM software will allow us to document all of our interactions that we have with the public, be able to track statuses of work orders and service requests to ensure that we're providing customer service to our customers in a timely manner, and ensuring that we have the proper documentation for all of those requests in place. We're also looking for June, late June. We've also applied for grant funding to have a full service delivery review conducted of the organization. This is a grant-dependent initiative, but what we'd be looking to receive from that funding would be to have a third party come in and do a comprehensive review of all of our administrative processes to see if we can find efficiencies and ultimately provide better service to our customers. We are also looking to August 2020 for the go live of our new city website. At this time, we have just finished the RFP process on securing the contractor that'll help with the development of our new website. But this will be important for us to make sure that we get the development of this website right and make sure that ultimately it'll feed into us providing better customer service. And finally, looking to the end of September 2020 for the completion of the new front counter downstairs. From what I've seen from working with the City of Port Colborne so far, the front-facing customer service that we provide is really the backbone of the customer service that we provide as an organization. Making sure that our customers have an inviting space to come to, as well as an accessible space, is paramount. So the completion of the front counter will be a critical part of this project. I wanted to talk quickly on the work breakdown structure. So like I had mentioned before, we wanted to make sure that we had an organized project approach to make sure that we were able to deliver all of these different initiatives in a timely manner. Basically, what we had identified is that up to 130 individual work tasks are going to be required across the organization from multiple stakeholders in order to deliver this project. So as Amber had mentioned before, this is a cross-corporate initiative and with all kinds of coinciding deadlines in order to meet a lot of these deliverables. So we want to really make sure that we're organized in keeping everybody on track. We've also set up governance in place to meet every 3 weeks with stakeholders involved in the project, just to ensure that we are meeting timelines and if there is any adjustments that need to be made. So here I'm going to touch on the allocation of budget for this project. What you'll see is the largest piece of the pie is budget that has not been allocated to anything. So that's money that has not been distributed or assigned to any projects. 26% of the budget has been allocated to the redesign of the front counter. 9% of the budget has been allocated to the website redesign project. All of the software and hardware and processes related to the phones, and the 9% that would be allocated to the service delivery review. Of course, that is an initiative that will only move forward if we receive the grant funding for that project. 8% allocated to staffing resources, 2% related to HR policy and customer service training, 2% related to the implementation of our customer relationship management software, 1% allocated to the corporate branding initiative, 1% associated to other communications costs, and 1% that would be allocated to the conceptual plan for the City Hall redesign project. So here I'm going to touch quickly on the change management plan. As mentioned earlier, we wanted to make sure that in order for us to deliver this project in a timely manner, we want to make sure that when we're introducing change to the project, that we have a set of principles in place to make sure that the changes that do impact the project are ranked in certain priority. For our change management plan, we have highlighted that schedule is the #1 priority for this project. What I mean by this is any decisions that are led to impact the project, we want to ensure that they don't interrupt the timelines. There's so many projects that are trying to move forward this year under the umbrella of the Customer Relationship Management Project that we ultimately want to make sure that any decisions that could possibly impact the deliverables of these projects are held with high regard with the impact to schedule. We also look to scope as the second highest project constraint. We want to make sure that all the decisions that can impact the project are not outside of scope. We also want to ensure ultimately that we do deliver high quality product and of course keeping budget in mind. The risk management portion of the project planning, we have identified 17 key risks to date that would impact the project. We have set contingency plans and mitigating actions in place to ensure that we reduce risk to this project. We also keep a well-documented risk register along with the project schedule and decision log to make sure that we're tracking all decisions made related to the project. And like I had mentioned before, having governance in place, such as our project team meetings, to ensure that if there are changes that need to happen, that we're able to involve and be collaborative with all stakeholders. So some of the major highlights of the project so far, as I mentioned before, as we are aware, the call center is now live. There's a lot of work that's happened around this project that may not be front-facing, but is also worth mentioning. There has been work done around IT in our systems to make sure that the customer's service project is successful. This includes the installation of VPN at the Valley Wellness Center and the Marina, essentially making sure that the city is on a singular network, including a single phone number, and also the implementation of a cradle point network. This is a network backup to ensure that we would still have active service in the events of an emergency situation. As mentioned before, there's a lot of work that's happened around project planning and the introduction of a customer satisfaction survey. So what do the next steps look like for this project? The customer satisfaction survey from here, as I'd mentioned earlier, making sure now that we set benchmarking in place with the information that we receive from our customers to ensure that the strategies that we're implementing for this project are successful. It'll allow us to see if the actions we take as an organization to improve customer service are working. The implementation of the customer relationship management software. We'll also be looking to redesign the website, taking actions to improve our customer service approach as an organization. This includes initiatives such as customer service training to frontline staff, hopefully the receiving of grant funding to move forward with a service delivery review and the redesign of the front counter. All right, that's it.
Great, thank you, Amber and Bill, for that. Questions from councillors? Questions? Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you for the excellent presentation. Before I ask my question, I just wanted to, I think it's important to let those in the gallery, those at home, the media, know the funding source of this. So it all looks rather expensive. There's been some comments about the logo review, which is part of all this enhancement. So I'm just wondering if, for the edification of everyone who doesn't know, what the total budget is for this project and where the funding comes from.
We've received a budget, just over $711,000 from the provincial government. They hope that we would look at service delivery. With this money, many municipalities throughout the province received similar grants last year. So we are focused on customer service. As Bill noted with the pie chart, we haven't allotted all of that money towards customer service. I believe 35% of it around then hasn't been allotted. We are going to try to bring that back to council and have other projects to enhance service delivery with the remaining funds.
Great. Well, kudos to the federal government, or to the provincial government, I should say, in this case, and kudos to you guys for being out there and having a plan and implementing it. I have to say, Amber, I'm particularly impressed with you jumping on this project. I think you had just enough fresh eyes, having been here for a year, and that's always good to see what's in the organization, but I know you brought some things to this project from the previous municipality you worked at. I think that the fact that we're doing this right with a plan will provide for some long-term benefits. And kudos to you for, I think sometimes you can be in the business and not on the business. So I think taking a step back and finding a coordinator with expertise in it was a stroke of genius. So thank you for that decision making. I wanted to ask to the presenter, have there been any early surprises or lessons learned? Like, I'd be interested in knowing what sort of has come to the surface on our why we were at a 60% failure or non-compliance rate in terms of our ranking with our citizens, and the early lessons learned, and what would be of interest to us that perhaps can be instituted in other departments.
I would say early on, just from my perspective, and one of the things I noticed, particularly in the organization, everybody's so busy. Everybody has all kinds of work that they're focused on and making sure that they deliver and they do a good job. Sometimes strategic projects can be difficult for people within the organization to act on when initiatives like this may sometimes be on the side of their desk. And also there's never really been an initiative like this taken by this organization before. So I think the one of the things I've noticed very early on is that there is an eagerness from staff within the organization to deliver good customer service, but sometimes just not having enough time to be able to focus to implementing a project of this magnitude. But what I have noticed is everybody's openness and willingness to be collaborative and work together on this. I have had no issues at all being able to sit down with other people across the organization to work on all of these different projects. And I think a lot of people appreciate that an initiative like this is being taken, and they appreciate now knowing now that maybe some of the burden has been taken off of them as far as organizing their approach to delivering good customer service, I would say.
Okay, great, thank you. The other comment I wanted to make is, at the end when this project funding and your role in it expires, I think it's important that there can be some ongoing training where possible. Perhaps that's something we need to put in our corporate budget across the corporation. In some areas maybe it is. I was also very impressed with, and I don't know what you use as far as a matrix, but the hiring practice to get the right people. So you can have all the backroom stuff you want. You can have the IT, you can have the systems, you can have the greatest website in the world, but we all know that the customer service business ultimately comes down to people and people interaction. So the staff members that I've met that have been hired, great job. I don't know if you want to speak to how that came about, because I think in a lot of organizations, the first job is, we'll put the new hire on the switchboard, that's the lowest paid job, and you'll learn from it, and here you go. And that's actually our face to the public, the person who answers the phone, person who meets you at the counter. So I think, whilst you can retrain people, you had the great advantage of hiring new people. And I don't know if you wanted to speak to the volume of people that applied and how many people ultimately were hired to do customer service at the front counter. Thank you.
So we've had several people been we hired there. We have some joint roles at the front counter: customer service and licensing clerk, customer service and accounts payable. And as they've been hired, we know this is rolling out, and we've been looking for those customer service qualities in them as well. We worked closely with HR, and they helped us with strategies. We started, with a phone interview, asking them questions, not the typical necessarily behavioral questions, but it's really been HR's approach. They've been great with this. We do have one more part-time person that's allotted in the budget. We haven't hired that person yet because we won't have the volume until the CRM, the citywide software, is installed, and then we'll need that person. So that will be this summer at some point.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Dash.
My question's simple. Have you talked to the staff behind the counter to see what type of direction they want or what type of design they're looking for to maybe enhance the project? Because the people that are usually doing that stuff are the ones that you might want to get, opinion on, as opposed to somebody that just makes it on a computer and doesn't really know.
That's actually the first place we went to. One of the things I noticed about the front counter right away was it's not very customer friendly. There are some key challenges from staff's point of view, and I found out about it as soon as I had started before this project began. So it was a great way to solve kind of these issues. We did do a brainstorming session with the first floor where they got to put up with their dreams, their number one things they need, things they absolutely hated about the front counter, their wish list, and we've been able to take it to design architects to help us create the look of the front counter.
Okay, Counselor. Anybody else? Counselor.
One last thing, I remember in the early going, there was talk about customer comes in and it's a financial matter, their taxes, their water bill, payment plan, et cetera, et cetera. How about the privacy issue?
Yeah.
Can you speak to that?
Privacy is a big issue. Reality is a small town. Our current counter kind of echoes. And if there's a private matter, we can't always have the privacy. Also, we can't bring them necessarily into our committee room safely if they are an irate customer. So we want to be able, no matter what kind of customer it is, to deal with them in a private matter if they wish. There will be, I guess it's not finalized yet, but it is very clear from the frontline staff that they really want a private area. So this would be somewhere where the public can enter, staff can enter. It would be a closed-off room that would still be visible with maybe glass, blinds, something. So if any assistance is needed, they could be quickly accessed, but the sound barrier would be there.
Okay. Counselor Baggett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One question I do have, the IT network, does it hook up to the fire department at all, or is that separate identity to the fire department?
I actually don't have an answer to that. Do you, Scott?
Sure. For your worship, to Councillor Bagu, the fire hall, the fire station on the island is actually connected to our servers and our phone systems. It's all over IP. And it's over fiber, and it's actually a milestone on the way to the engineering. So when you make a phone call, from extension 100 something on City Hall to extension 300 something at the fire hall, it's actually not going out over bell lines, it's going over our internet. When you try to get to a website from the fire hall, you're actually on a computer that's sending a signal back to, or even save a file you're working on in a Word document or Excel. It's actually transmitting over fiber optic lines back to our servers on the first floor of City Hall. So they're fully integrated with the city's network. All the computers are city computers, not fire department computers. And the storage is there, off-site backup, and all the technology that is available in City Hall.
Okay, good. The other one is just a comment, or maybe a question after the comment. I've talked to a few people who not regularly call City Hall, but they call the switchboard because they have a concern, and the feedback I have been getting, the ladies at the front counter, they direct the call beautifully, but the phone call just doesn't get answered to the person that it's supposed to. And they'll try it 3 or 4 times, and then they get sort of upset, but they say, you know, I can't get upset at the women that answer the phone because they're so nice. So I've had 3 people tell me that. So it actually calms them down, I guess. But my question is there something in the planning of this rollout that would guarantee somebody has a concern, answer, whether an email answer or a phone call, reply within so many, like 24 hours or 36 hours?
Yes. Through the mayor to Councillor Bagu. That's one of the intentions behind the implementation of the customer relationship management software. It'll allow us to document all of our customer interactions that we have with the public. And through that documentation, the software will allow us to track whether our service requests are being closed in a timely manner. Our management staff will possess the ability to be able to observe these different service requests and work order requests to make sure that these requests are being completed in a timely manner.
So just, Bill, through to you and Amber, because initially we talked about where that frontline service representative that works for the city would probably in most cases be able to answer those concerns before it's actually sent to a particular department. You're still on track to getting that situated?
Yeah, so right now we're in phase 1. We knew it was really important to get the automated system off. So even though we weren't ready for the CRM to be implemented, we wanted to get the phone lines going. So right now they are acting more like a switchboard. There is increasingly a number of calls they're able to answer, but they are mostly just passing on to the next person. When this is implemented by the summer, they will be asking why you're calling to City Hall, and if they can help you, they'll help you. If they can log the complaint, they'll log the complaint. We don't have an intranet, so there isn't that knowledge-based information that they can grab information from. So that's part of the update to the city website. It's going to be not only the public being able to use the website, but staff being able to use the website, and that's also going to make sure it's always up to date, because our customer service representatives are going to be using it to answer questions to the public.
Okay. Councillor Wells?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to either Bill or Amber. In one of your slides, you presented the priority and you identified quality as being the 3rd priority. Typically, we would always look for quality to be number 1, like Ford. But I was just wondering if you could just explain that we're not losing quality on this, just how it fits in.
Through the mayor to Councillor Wells, just to provide a little bit more clarification to that slide in particular, with regards to standard project management principles, there's always going to be a time in a project where you may have contradicting decisions or coinciding deadlines, and it's not that the organization is looking to compromise quality in the service, but it's looking to make sure that the hierarchy of where you may have 2 colliding or contradicting decisions, where you're able to have a mutual understanding about which particular project constraint takes a priority. So it's not that we're always looking to provide a high quality, especially with the delivery of this project, but it's just making sure that we have that framework in place that in the instance that we do have coinciding or colliding decision points, competing, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, council? Staff, thank you again.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. Our next is delegations. We have Jack Halinga, resident of City of Port Colborne, regarding the city's consolidated zoning bylaw. Jack has a presentation. If you want to come, just a reminder that there is a 10-minute limit.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and staff, audience. I'm going to start with something really simple, just a series of yes and no questions. And if I may, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the planning department. Does an existing land use require a secondary plan if there is no change in use?
Dan?
Through Mr. Mayor, could you repeat that one more time?
Does an existing land use require a secondary plan if there is no change in the land use?
No.
Does an existing MAO, mineral aggregate operation land use, require a secondary plan if the land use continues as mineral aggregate operation?
No.
Does a rezoning from, say, agricultural to mineral aggregate operation outside the urban boundary require a secondary plan?
No.
Is a local municipal zoning bylaw restricted from being more stringent than the provincial policy statement and the regional official plan as long as it doesn't conflict with either?
Yes.
Given the following quote of permitted uses and definition of MAO in the Port Colborne Consolidated Zoning Bylaw, permitted uses, A, mineral aggregate operations. Definitions: mineral aggregate operations means an operation other than wayside pits and quarries conducted under a license or permit under the Aggregate Resources Act or successors thereto, and associated accessory facilities used in extraction, transport, beneficiation, processing, or recycling of mineral aggregate resources and derived products such as asphalt and concrete, or the production of secondary related products. Given that, is a pit or quarry zoned mineral aggregate operations prohibited from asphalt recycling on the quarry floor?
There would be more information that would be necessary to determine that answer.
Yeah, Jack, anytime that Dan or his department needs to send back these answers, I'm going to make sure that he does.
They're supplied. They're all provided to in this presentation.
Questions?
To clerk.
The questions.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So how many of these do you have?
Just two more.
Okay, just that any time if Dan wants to get back to that information, that's what we'll do.
Yep.
Okay.
Given the permitted uses and definition of mineral aggregate operations, is a pit or quarry zoned mineral aggregate operations prohibited from manufacturing asphalt or concrete on the quarry floor?
Again, I would need to know more information as to what types of use would be allowable.
Does the current mineral aggregate operations zoning in the consolidated zoning bylaw protect the aquifer from contamination by the permitted uses in the mineral aggregate operations zoned properties? And this is the consolidated zoning bylaw.
There is nothing in the zoning bylaw that refers to the protection of the aquifer.
Okay, that's all for the questions. The consolidated zoning bylaw was followed the same night with an interim controls bylaw. There are 2 members sitting in the council at this time. The third is absent, that were here at the time that interim control bylaw was passed. That interim control bylaw provided stricter requirements in the mineral aggregate operations. That interim control bylaw extends for 1 year. From a timing standpoint, let me see if I've got them here. Can you scroll down just a little bit? February 2017 was the first public meeting for the consolidated zoning bylaw. A year later, February 26, it returned to council for approval. There were substantial changes between February 2017 and 2018, which weren't brought forward to the public. And so they had no recourse until at that meeting on February 26, it was brought to the attention of council. So council asked for a second public meeting, which was held on March 26, 2018. And it came to council with the interim control bylaw on April 23rd of 2018. If it was to be addressed within a year, what are we on now? Are we on the interim controls bylaw, or are we now on the consolidated zoning bylaw, which doesn't have as strict controls in it? The interim control bylaw was to put stricter controls on it. And now we're in limbo. One of the other documents on that CD is the report by staff, Planning and Development Planning Report 2018-50. The very last paragraph of that report, that an interim control bylaw attached to Planning and Development Department Planning Report 2018-50 as Appendix C be approved subject to Section 38 of the Planning Act for a period of up to 1 year for those lands proposed to be zoned mineral aggregate operation to control the use of lands until proper study and policy has been completed. That's well over 8 months past the deadline. Have we seen the proper study and policy review? Because I've been following it and I haven't seen it, and it was a requirement of the interim control bylaw. I guess that's pretty much my question is, what are we dealing with? What policy, what bylaw are we on? And when is it going to be presented to the public so that they can have their say on it?
Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Currently, right now, Port Colborne Quarries has an application before City Council to change the zoning and the official plan for pits 1 and 2. In conversations with the region and as expressed to council, that requires public consultation with the public and with the agencies before it goes back to council for consideration. That was one of the main decisions as to why nothing was being done on the interim control bylaw, because A, there's no land use that is being proposed at the moment, and B, there is currently an application both, again, for zoning and official plan changes. So instead of staff attempting to complete that project, the need for the secondary plan from Port Colborne Quarries, which again would involve the public, the decision was at that time would be best to then contemplate any sort of policy and or study as part of the uses that would be considered and the policies within Port Colborne Quarries properties, pit 1 and 2.
If I might add to that, mineral aggregate operations is a zoning that doesn't just apply to Port Colborne quarries. It applies to all of mineral aggregate operations, including those that will apply for rezoning in the future. They must comply to that same zoning and the regulations, uses, and prohibited uses within that zone. Within a year or two, Port Colborne will be confronted with an application for rezoning an agricultural site to mineral aggregate operations. It is going to happen, and it is going to happen soon. And yet we have an interim control bylaw that has expired, and we don't have an appropriate mineral aggregate operations zoning in the consolidated zoning bylaw. So there's a gap there, and I'm not talking about any particular owner. I'm not talking about Port Colborne quarries. I didn't mention any names. I'm not talking about secondary plans. It's strictly mineral aggregate operations that has to be addressed properly.
Thank you, Jack. Any questions to the speaker? Council? Yes? Okay. Thanks, Jack. Any questions to staff? Councilor?
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Aquilina. So, based on the last statement of Mr. Halinga, an application that would then perhaps come forward in this next year and a half for expansion of or another site for a quarry, then could not go ahead until the work that you've prescribed being done. In this case, you mentioned a particular applicant, but no expansion could occur until your work is done. Would that be correct or not?
Danny?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councilor Bruno, if I understand the question, if a new application within the municipality, and it's important to know where in the municipality, is it outside the urban area, you would require an official plan amendment from the municipality, a regional plan amendment from the Niagara region, and as well a zoning bylaw amendment. Part of that process is going to have a whole suite of studies that are going to be required to then support any change in the zoning or official plan to support that use of mineral aggregate operation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor? Councilor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Jack. Jack, does that answer your question? There seems to be a little disconnect between.
There is still a
something.
disconnect.
So, and I'm not even sure I understand the disconnect. So somehow we got to get on the same page here so that we're,
There are, as I understand as well, there are zoning official plan amendments required, both the city official plan and the regional official plan. They must meet the new Aggregate Resources Act, which was just changed in December of 2019. There are some things the city has lost control over, such as the excavation depth of quarries, haulage routes, and encroachment on road allowances. But if it requires an amendment to the zoning bylaw, which zoning bylaw? The interim control bylaw or the consolidated zoning bylaw?
Yep, Dan?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councilor Bonner and Alta Council, the interim control bylaw, as far as my opinion, is lapsed. It's null and void. We are under the current zoning bylaw that was passed in 2018. If a new application is made, it's going to be in response to what policies are in place, both provincially, regionally, and municipally. Same with the zoning bylaw. We need to ensure it complies with all policies of the province and the region. And as well, eventually our documents will catch up to both the province and the municipality of Niagara, and as well within our official plan.
Councilor?
Thank you. So Dan, in your opinion, are we in any danger of not having something if something comes forward? Are we going to get caught in some, something we're not ready for if it happens?
Dan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Bodnar, no, we will not be caught. There is no use proposed. An application would be required to change any use on the lands that are used for quarry operations. The municipality is fine, it is okay, because any new use requires council approval.
Okay,
Counselor?
thank you. Mr. Mayor, through you to Jack. So Jack, does that answer any of your
It
question on
answers
that?
all the questions, and it really concerns me that the consolidated zoning bylaw was to address the concerns expressed at the public meetings. The interim control bylaw was put in place so that the consolidated zoning bylaw could be passed, and the amendments should have been addressed within the year, and the controls of the interim control bylaw no longer exist, so they don't have those controls. We are on, as I showed the definition of mineral aggregate operations and the permitted uses, they do not protect the city, the aquifer, the permitted uses within an aquifer when the province can allow it to excavate into the aquifer. It does not restrict what else can happen in that, and under our consolidated zoning bylaw, pretty much anything, any industrial use can go in there, including asphalt recycling, crushing, concrete manufacturing, and asphalt plant can, under our definition, occur within the limits of the aquifer of the quarry under our consolidated zoning bylaw. And the interim control bylaw took care of that.
Okay, so can I continue,
Yep,
Mr. Mayor?
yep,
Just-
go ahead,
I
Councilor.
feel like the referee, but I need to understand this myself. You think you got it, and then you don't got it, maybe. So, Dan, rebuttal on that one?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Bodnar, no, presently, right now, an asphalt manufacturing plant is a prohibited use.
So Jack, you hear it's a prohibited use, along with the few other things that Jack had mentioned. I don't want to,
Excuse me.
I'm not a planner, so I'm
Back to
still,
my questions.
I just want to make sure that Jack has his questions answered to the best of the ability we can tonight. And I understand that we, certainly Dan, you may want to answer some after you think about the couple that he said there. But, so Jack, where are you at on this? Is there,
Well, I'm reading from the consolidated zoning bylaw, mineral aggregate operations. Mineral aggregate operations means, I'll just skip right to B, associated accessory facilities used in extraction, transport, beneficiation, processing, or recycling of mineral aggregate resources and derived products such as asphalt and concrete, or the production of secondary related products. A lawyer is going to look at that and say asphalt is derived from aggregate, and therefore it's a permitted use in the quarry. It is not tight enough to restrict it. And we had proposed wording. We submitted in 2018, and the council of the day, you were one of the members there, Councillor Danch was on that council at the time. It was sufficient enough that council directed that a report be brought back to address it within a year, and we're still waiting to see what we're dealing with. And the fact that we're dealing with something this vague tells me that we are susceptible.
Dan, can I suggest that you answer these questions to Jack, but at the same time, give it to us so that you can give us full, complete answers, because we're not going to get all this done this evening with all the nuances that are involved with this. So that you can get these answers so that, and if Jack has anything further, he can get those further questions back to you and answer it in a timely manner. But at least it allows council to look at the answers and derive any questions that come from us on this. Because we're not going to fix this tonight, I'll tell you, if there is an issue, but it will come out as those answers come forward and how staff wants to, or how council wants to discuss this through staff and how our bylaws and and policies work here now. So can we get that done?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, and as far as I'm concerned, there is no issue, once again, but I'd be more than happy to prepare something for council's information and the
Okay,
public.
Timeline, Dan, would be middle of next week? Is that fine?
I would think, based on the questions, if council wants an actual complete report, it could be at the next council meeting or the second, or the first one in March.
Okay. Councilor Bodnar? Is that fine with you? Yep, okay. We'll go first meeting of March then. Okay, Dan? Is that all right? Okay. Great.
Thank you very much. I understand that in some of the generalities at the front there of the bylaw, there are prohibited uses, but when a mineral aggregate operation specifically addresses what is used, and there are no prohibited uses in that section, the zoning section, that I think there's a big gap.
Yeah, so so Jack, we'll get Dan to answer those and make sure that when it comes to us, we can also ask those questions. And it also, in the time frame, it allows you to get back to us and Dan with regards to when that report comes to us in March. Okay?
Thank you very much. for
Good.
your time.
Thanks, Jack. Okay, next is the mayor's report. I will say, wow, what a weekend. So with regards to our signature event in the wintertime, our Sports Fest, Mother Nature certainly cooperated and finally brought us some snow for the 21st Annual Sports Fest this past weekend. Many thanks from this council and our staff to organizations, businesses, and individuals who took the time to set up events for our community to, as Michelle would say, participate. We thank to the participants who stayed warm playing volleyball, euchre, music trivia, swimming and gym activities at the YMCA, and tasting at the soup cook-off downtown at the canal side. And to those a little more hardy who played hockey, snow golf, snow pitch, active camp ball hockey at the Valley Center. And finally, to the participants who were freezing for a reason. And we were able to raise over $15,000 for Special Olympics by plunging into the chilly waters. Thank you, counselors. Yeah, that's certainly a huge amount. The $15,000 for Special Olympics by plunging into the chilly waters of Lake Erie under the watchful eye of our water rescue firefighters who had to be freezing, and the public who showed up to cheer them on. I didn't do a head count, but there had to be, you think that many, Frank? 1,000 people? There's lots. I was saying 300 to 500, but it was a lot of the public came out to cheer us on. My wife and I, it really wasn't that cold going in. It was worse coming out. It was, you think it would have been just as soon as you put your feet in, but it didn't. You got in, you had the adrenaline going. But for the 63 participants, it was a lot of fun, a lot of cheering, a lot of cool costumes that went through. The Team Port Colborne, we all had on our Hawaiian shirts. So any photos you see in the newspaper and on Facebook, a lot of the people in those shirts were City of Port Colborne team people. So great finish to a great weekend. All the organizations that did all the events, again, fantastic. And the pièce de résistance, the City of Port Colborne team won our division. The Mayor's Cup, which is, this is for our division, we're in D division. That's the second time we've won that cup. We're on there. There is, that goes back to the trophy case for all the 4 divisions, but we do get a keeper plaque that'll have the CAO put up so it's prominent within City Hall for a while, then we can get that over to our valet center in the trophy case out front. So I'll present that to you. We defeated Niagara-on-the-Lake 4-2 in the finals. We had a 2-win, 1-tie record. We were undefeated for the weekend. We started off Friday night defeating Haldeman 4-0. We tied Niagara-on-the-Lake. Mayor Niagara-on-the-Lake, Betty DeZerio, and I had a bet, which I'd never let the guys know until the game was over. It was for a case of beer. So I owe her a 6-pack or a 12-pack, and she owes me a 12-pack. So we tied them 4-4. Then we played St. Catharines on Saturday afternoon and defeated St. Catharines 7-5. And then because we finished first and second with Niagara Lake, we met them again in the final. So fantastic, great city crew. Fellow Councillor Beauregard was a healthy scratch all weekend because he had a commitment. But we'll look forward to your hockey skills next year, believe me. And somebody mentioned with our staff speakers about our hirings. Some of the young guys that we've hired over the last number of years have some great Port Colborne hockey talent, and it certainly showed on the weekend. It was good. It was lots of fun. Waynfleet was a winner of their division. Fort Erie, they lost their division. Just trying to Club Frontenac, who was in A division, they beat Welland. And the other winner was, I think, Grimsby won the C division. They beat us in the finals in D division last year, so Grimsby won their division. So yeah, so that was fantastic. So if everybody saw the Sports Fest, just to reiterate, Legion Branch 56, we thank them. Music Trivia Night was down at Canalside. The YMCA had free swimming and skating. MP Badaway sponsored another free skate on Sunday. Whiskey Run did the annual snow golf tournament. We had the volleyball tournaments, both indoors and outdoors. We had the Zuvik Memorial Snow Pitch Tournament at the TA Landing Complex. The active camps, which we operated both, or all at the Valley Health and Wellness Center. Who else do we do on here? The soup cook-off at Canalside on Sunday. And then the Polar Plunge, which finished the weekend in support of Special Olympics. So yeah, lots of people around town, lots of things going on. This morning, myself, our CAO, and our EDO officer met with the Vice President of Maritime Operations of Viking Cruises. He was in from Switzerland. Viking Cruises is currently building its new expedition ship, which will cruise the Great Lakes starting in 2022. The Viking Cruise Line will be sailing ships on the Great Lakes in 2022, and Port Colborne will be one of the ports where their ships will be stopping. So we had that meeting today. Viking Cruises is currently building 2 of these large 200-meter-long expedition ships. Stephen Burnett, Executive Director of the Great Lakes Cruising Coalition and Cruise Ontario, said the vessels will be custom built so they are able to get through the various locks along the itinerary route. In order to build to a Seaway maximum size, the Viking folks worked with the Seaway. They measured the locks to make sure they knew exactly the beam and the length they could build. Burnett said the Great Lakes is the last cruising region in the world, but the nonprofit agency he heads is working to change that, and we are actually having a meeting with that organization tomorrow with our economic development office. Our cruise association has been working for the last 20 years, and at this point they have 8 cruise ships that now commit themselves each spring to the Great Lakes. These ships will accommodate 385 passengers. The St. Lawrence Seaway was also in attendance at that, and details of the mooring of these ships were discussed, and what the needs were of Viking, and we're working towards that for 2022. Great news. 2 weeks ago we had Voyageur in the EDO office. Myself and Scott met with them. We took them down to the west dock near our old works yard where we're looking to put those ships. The Voyageurs will be here this summer with a number of cruises that'll start and end in Port Colborne. So the cruising season, but Viking, as everybody knows, you see their advertisements on TV. They're one of the world's premier cruise lines, probably one of the world's largest, specifically in Europe. And this bodes well for not only the Great Lakes, the St. Lawrence Seaway, but the city of Port Colborne. This morning, MP Badaway held a budget roundtable. I was able to attend, as well as Councillor Bruno. We were invited to this by MP Badaway's office. Items that we discussed are the trade corridor, which are St. Lawrence Seaway, our highways, and our rail lines here within the city and the region of Niagara, all are part of this new trade corridor that the federal government has done. We discussed the community improvement plan for our downtown area and how the funding will be rolled out for that. We're hoping to hear more of that once these budgets are, or the budget is passed by the federal government. We talked about infrastructure dollars for the canal for the St. Lawrence Seaway Authority, land development and work along the whole St. Lawrence Seaway from St. Catharines to Port Colborne. We discussed the Mid-Peninsula Corridor, and the first phase of that would go from Fort Erie through to Highway 58 just at the Port Colborne-Welland border. The affordable housing and funds, regulations, and rules regarding red tape around affordable housing were discussed. That is an initiative that is going to be in the budget according to our MP, and what he's put in with help from different agencies around Niagara. So the affordable housing initiative is not only just that what we've spoken here around the city council table. It's gone further both at the regional level, other municipalities, but now at our MP's door in Ottawa. We talked about the gas tax fund, which was doubled last year. Our MP is trying to get that as a permanent number. So our normal income on that grant is around 611 or 640,000. So it could double to a little over $1 million to help us with infrastructure funding here in the municipality. We talked about the skilled trades. Vance held a skilled trades roundtable last fall, and from that is an Ontario Skills Trade Alliance and Trade Skills Initiative that the federal government is working in collaboration both with the province and our skilled trades partners within unions and corporations, and hoping to boost that so that we get more of our young people involved in our skilled trades. Included in those skilled trades, I might add, is the marine side of things. The shipping industry right now is having a hard time drawing in skilled workers from Canada, both West Coast, East Coast, and along the Great Lakes. We do have Georgian College that offers that program, but they want to ramp that up so we can get more people involved in that trade within the marine industry, which really affects us here in Port Colborne. They will be starting a Great Lakes caucus, which will be very similar to what the United States has had for a number of years. And I met a number of the members of the federal, U.S. federal government, and also the state governments when I was in Wisconsin last summer. Canada wants to start this, the Canadian government, where we actually have our MPs that are on the Great Lakes with their ridings. They actually have a caucus which will work with their U.S. representation on their Great Lakes caucus, and that talks about water levels, erosion, pollution, the marine industry, and fishing, sports tourism. There's a myriad of things that they'll be discussing, and how the federal government, along with provincial governments, can take more initiative with regards to the Great Lakes. We discussed the infrastructure bank with regards to funding for infrastructure programs. We talked about trade corridor money that can come down to Port Colborne with regards to any initiatives that we have. We'll be discussing that further with Vance and his ministry, that he's the chair of the Ministry of Transportation Committee up in Ottawa. And we also spoke about the federal development funds that are available for companies that may want to come here and settle and buy land and open up a business here in Port Colborne. So that was this morning. Anything to add to that, Councillor, that I may have forgotten on that? Pretty much sums everything up. Okay, so both Gary and I had a number of initiatives that we brought to the table. Midnight tonight is the deadline for Vance to get in our information. To be quite honest, Vance sat here for a number of years along with Councillor Bodner. He's very aligned, and he's very aligned with us, and we're very aligned with him with regards to what we want to see in Port Colborne and the development we want to see here. So a number of items he brought forward and spoke about on reports that he is submitting to the Minister of Finance with regards to the upcoming budget aligns well with development here in Port Colborne, both marine related, business and commercial related, our downtown revitalization and things like that. job-related, housing-related. So those have already gone in, so he has listened to what we've said here at our council table, and he has put those within his report. And also working with Niagara College, Brock University, as well as the other municipalities in his riding, and a number of organizations throughout his riding in Niagara. So that's it for my mayor's report. Any questions? Regional Councillor Butters is away ill today, so she sends her regrets. Are there any questions on the regional side of things? Thank you, Councillor. Under Councillor's items, and I will note that Councillor Desmarais is away, and she's off sick also. So she sends her regrets, Council. Staff responses to previous councillors' inquiries. Anything, Stephen? Nicole, anything tonight? Anything from the clerk's office? Dan, anything? CAO? Questions for staff? I'll start on my right tonight. Councillor Wells?
Through you, your worship, thank you, to Steve. I'm still getting some bad responses with regards to the drag out from Shirkston Shores. I've gone down there a number of times and found that you can't drive down Beach Road without having to go to car wash both times. It doesn't appear like they're sweeping it. It doesn't appear like they're washing it. It's just a terrible mess. And I really don't know how the residents on Beach Road put up with it, to be honest with you. So.
Steve?
Through you, your worship, to Councillor Wells. I was out there a week ago, and I was speaking to one of the residents out there, and I noticed the same issue. There was large chunks of mud right in the middle of the road, and it was extremely messy. Since then, we've talked to the contractor, we've also talked to the developer, and also the owner, and it has been substantially better, but there is still room for improvement there, so we'll keep working with them to make this better.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, Councillor? Councillor Baggett, you're all set?
Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Couple of ones, I guess it's maybe for the CAO. So I was on vacation last week, so I guess I'll get you twice, maybe. On January 30th, this ad by the city of Colborne was in the Colborne Leader. And I just a question, I had to come to City Hall to ask this question, but on some of the description of lands that the city is selling, the one property on Wallen Street, the assessed value is $70,000, but the minimum tender amount is $221,000, $97.07. So just, I talked to the clerk and she gave me an explanation, but I'm sure a lot of people, when they read this in their paper, they go, wow, like what's going on here with the city? So maybe you can give a short explanation what this is about.
CAO?
Sure, through your worship to Councillor Bagu. So what you're referring to is a tax sale. So when a property is in excess of 3 years in arrears of the property tax payments, the city can in fact start a process. It's a year-long process to sell the property and recover the outstanding taxes. So it can happen that, and what normally happens, and in fact in the vast majority of cases, the owner comes in and pays the taxes, or a mortgage company comes in and pays the taxes, or a relative comes in and pays the taxes, and the tax sale is averted. And very seldomly we get to the point that you're referring to, where we advertise and we proceed to sell the property through an auction, a tax sale. Now the minimum amount that a person must pay, is all of the taxes, all of the interest, and all of the costs associated with undertaking this process. And because it is a year-long process with many trips to the land registry office to do title searches and register documents on title and mail pieces of information to the property owner, the fees can be in the thousands of dollars. So you could be looking at thousands of dollars in taxes, thousands of dollars of interest, and thousands of dollars of fees. And it's fine when it's a few $100,000 property, if that's accrued to be $12,000 or $15,000 or $18,000. If and when it gets to a tax sale, a person's probably going to bid an amount that approaches the market value of the property. So say in that example I just cited, $400,000, the $15,000 or $18,000 or $20,000 in taxes and fees will be paid. All of the extra money is held in court, and the person who owns that property can apply to get the money back. Once again, very seldomly gets to this stage. However, what you're looking at is easily explainable. It's not a good situation to be in. What it means is that the fees and the taxes and the penalties have exceeded the assessed value of the property. Now, we also know that assessed value is not always market value. So it could be that that property is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, but MPAC hasn't been able to keep up on the assessment. And we will get a bidder if it goes to a tax sale who pays all of those tax amounts. But some council members who have long service on council will recall, sometimes there's no bidders at all because the minimum the minimum cancellation price or the minimum bid exceeds what any bidder is willing to bid. And in those cases, the property comes to be vested with the municipality, and we would be the owner of the property, but we would never collect the taxes in cash. In cases like that, we could decide to try to develop the property or sell the property. In some cases, it's a contaminated property, and we might have to make a decision to clean the property or to protect the contaminants from leaving the property. So I don't know the specific property that you've made reference to. As you said, this happened during my vacation. But the reason that the cancellation price or the minimum bid is higher than the assessed value is because it's the sum total of the fees of the registration, all of the taxes, and all of the interest that have accrued over the years.
Counselor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do think too, it's also demolition costs of that
Oh,
furniture store also. Okay, yeah, yeah, well, salvages, bought my first couch there when I got married. Second question, probably for the CAO. We mentioned, I think it was last council meeting, about scheduling of budget meetings. I just wonder how that's coming along. There's things people want to plan, so are we talking what month we're going to start our budget?
Sure. Through your worship to Councillor Baggio again. Staff, and I know council and the mayor are very anxious to undertake the budget process. We have scheduled a meeting for staff to see the budget in its draft form. This is on Thursday. The directors and senior staff of all of the departments will see the budget for the first time from our acting finance officer, which is our former finance officer, Peter. That's where we duke it out amongst each other and get it as low as possible to bring it to council. And what we intend to do after that meeting is schedule probably 3 budget meetings in rapid succession. I know from talking to the mayor, one thing we'd like to do is try to schedule on the Monday between 2 Monday council meetings. And if we can, have a Monday and then be right back at it on the Wednesday or the Tuesday of the same week. So what I'll do after Thursday's meeting is have the mayor's admin start to schedule those meetings so that hopefully we can have a approved budget before, I would say before March break, if that's not too ambitious. A meeting in February or 2 and one at the start of March. If it takes more than 3 meetings, that schedule might have to be extended out, but that's our intention. Then we'll quickly, hot on the heels of that, do the city's water and wastewater budget, which is the setting of the water rates.
Okay, Counselor? Thank you. Counselor Bruno, anything? Thank you. Counselors? Counselor? Yep, you're next.
I got a great new idea. I think it goes towards Steve and, I don't know, possibly our work side of things, but, and I've talked to a couple of the city staff, and I just kind of wondered, any chance we could do a little maintenance on that promenade that we have that's looking better every year with the updates and whatnot, and maybe get that sidewalk machine to run down there and clear it up for some of us people that want to strut our stuff, you know, early in the morning, late in the day, and sometimes in the afternoon. But you know, we're talking about our waterfront and getting ships and stuff like that in the summertime. Well, there's more to Port Colborne in the summertime. We've got a nice promenade, and I just wonder if maybe we could have a peek at that. And I know we've got something coming up in our meeting tonight about some snow removal and stuff like that, and we should probably put this on the agenda if we could. Just a feeling.
Okay, Steve, you'll take that? Okay, thank you. Councillor Clayloff?
Just a quick thank you. I already spoke to Steve just to let everyone know. I had an email just before coming to council tonight saying to me they were waiting for it to get dark because they were told the last final lights were coming on West Street. And we've already had, thanks to us and to Steve for taking care of it so quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bodnar, anything?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Steve. Steve, I wonder whether you can enlighten me on how we treat handicap parking spots after a snowstorm. Do we have does it fall somewhere in the chain of events after a snowstorm? Thank you.
Steve?
Through you, your worship, to Councillor Bodnar. So our primary focus after a snow event is clearing of the roadways themselves and the sidewalks. After those are completed, well, sorry, I shouldn't say sidewalks, I should say sidewalks in front of our city-owned facilities. Once those are completed, we'll shift over and start completing handicap stalls, different stalls along the roadside, curb ramps, and different areas where we have our crossing guard locations too. So there will be a slight delay in there, but they are on a list that we make it there. So there is a slight delay in those.
Okay, Councillor?
Just because I was going to read something and it's disappeared off my computer, so, but I want to mention it, but I'll read it next meeting. So the Niagara region made a motion and it passed supporting the protection of the aquifer. And I'll read that in its entirety, but I just wanted to put it out there that it did pass the regional council. And sorry, I had it and it's gone, so. Technology and me sometimes don't mix real well. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor. That's it? Okay. On to items. Item 1, Councillor Wells.
Thank you, your worship. Chief Administrative Officer Report 2020-23, subject update, logo revisions and branding.
Seconder for that? Councillor Bruno. Councillor Wells, do you want to hear the presentation?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So this time I'll call forward Michelle Zinga and Joe Jones of Symmetric to give us their overview. Press your red button. Thank you.
There we go.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of council, and since there's no one in the audience, and everyone at home. So, as you all know, I am Michelle Zenga, and joining me is Joe Jones. He is the owner of Symmetric who is the design company that is working on our branding, the new logo, and our guidelines that will complement that logo. So I was at council, the last council meeting, was asked to bring forward some more information. So I have just a quick presentation based on the report that's been presented. So what is our brand? So just to clarify as well, Bill, our colleague on the customer service project, which this is tied to, gave a great presentation as this branding project is part of the overall customer service project. And the funding for this project is part of the municipal modernization grant from provincial funding. So the $12,000 is coming from the $711,000 that's been allocated by the province as part of this overall project. And just to clarify that it is not coming from municipal operating budget. So why? Why are we addressing our branding? So more than looking at what's kind of been coined as a rebrand, we're actually needing to establish a clear brand. We don't have a clear brand, and we need consistency in our branding. And the only way to create consistency is by implementing guidelines for our brand. It's also to ensure that our brand aligns with our vision as a city and our strategic plan. So why now? A look at where we are now, which is full of inconsistencies and applications that are currently across the municipality. This is what was in your appendix the last meeting. It's also your appendix A in this report of logos that were approved in 2004 and the variations of logos that are used across the municipality. So the next few slides I'm going to be showing are ways that our logo has been applied across the municipality to give you an idea of the inconsistencies that we're facing in terms of our brand. So this is the welcome sign at Highway 58. This is using the current brand that we typically primarily are using, which is our Sunset logo with the schooner. Because of the way that the coloring is, we're primarily pulling a lot of black or using the red, yellow, and orange. And with our new Canal Day sign through the new branding that was implemented 2 years ago for Canal Days. This is our sign at Market Square that was recently installed, and it's kind of pulling more from that light blue schooner version of the branding that was originally approved in 2004. Sugarloaf Marina was given their own version, just using the light blue schooner, as opposed to any of the Sunset logos as well, so just back and forth. Seaway Park doesn't replicate any of the previous ones I've shown, and if Councillor Danch has just stepped away, but as he constantly frequents the promenade, the Port Promenade sign is also just like this one along the promenade. Councillor Bruno's favorite. Lockgate Gateway Park, which is also following with the current, if we were to be keeping with the Sunset, this is what the branding would traditionally look like through the city and complementary to the welcome sign that I'd shown on Highway 58. We have some beautiful new resurfaced tennis courts over on the west side, and signs that were chosen for those are a blue with white and using our Participate branding. Kind of none of that light blue or the sunset colorings used in this either. Our trucks that are around the city, you'll see there's the Port Colborne logo, but the font used for Public Works does not meet the font that's used for the city of Port Colborne's logo. And some trucks have blue runners on them and some trucks have nothing. There's the Stone Port Promenade. I'm going to point to pay attention to the logo looks like what maybe our current logo is in the Port Colborne, but that's actually the logo that was pre-2004. And you can tell by the number of knobs on the wheel, there's too many. And that's why in 2004 our logo was originally changed, was because it's only supposed to have 5 knobs around and a half and 9 in a total.
Spindles.
Spindles, thank you, spindles. This is our Harbor Master, which is along our waterfront, using colors of red, which traditionally red hasn't been used out of our Sunset logo anywhere, white, navy blue, the light blue, and then unfortunately just have a little bit, but you can see then our Sunset logo is also on there. So a lot of inconsistencies in terms of color application. And that is one of the prominent buildings that you see while you're on West Street. Internally, administratively, we do not have consistency even in our own applications with respect to business cards. Some are horizontal and some are vertical. The logo actually used, and because sometimes we're using different companies, the logo is actually different. The top one, I've used Stephen Kors, our manager of revenue. It's actually darker. It's almost looking red on the outsides. And then Steve, I've pulled yours up here. It's a little lighter. And so there's different applications even of what logo is being produced. The top here, job description, that's what Human Resources is using to promote our jobs. And then internally, when we're using accounts receivable, we have this blue logo. So again, just a lot of inconsistencies in how it's applied across the corporation. Bill, in his presentation earlier, alluded to our website redesign, which we're all very excited about in terms of customer delivery, ease of navigation. But it's also important in terms of identifying who we are as a corporation on our website. The logo at the top is the primary logo that is on every page, which is our Sunset logo. However, if you look at the page, the colors that are used on the page are none of the colors that are part of our branding. And so, although we have the logo, there should be consistency of our branding and our coloring and our fonts throughout our website, which currently does not exist, which with the redesign of the website, we're hoping to apply what our decided brand of hopefully tonight is into the website for that consistency and ease. So as staff are navigating our website, they're also knowing our brand and interacting with our brand. Change. It can be very scary, but there are still a lot of companies that we all know and love that have changed over the years. Nike. There's an evolution from 1971 to the present, change in terms of their font use, in terms of whether they're using a swoop or no swoop. Microsoft is a company that we use internally, and they have evolved over the years. Our beloved Toronto Maple Leafs. they have definitely evolved. This is even just part of the transformation. Sometimes there was one-off years. They were using a green leaf as a homage to the St. Pat's. Toronto Raptors, recent champions, they have changed not only color schemes, but have also changed in losing the Raptor and bringing just the solid basketball. And the Ontario government has also recently changed due to branding suggestions. So as per the report and as per some suggestions that were sent out, so based on the last council meeting, I went back with Symmetric and we looked at 5 different options, only wanting to present 3 to council. So the 3 that were based on the feedback I had received from members of council would are presented in this package. So option A is what was presented at the last council meeting as well. And currently now. So based on the report and how the report was laid out, I've based them on advantages and disadvantages of each option that's being presented. So one of the advantages of this particular logo is it verifies navigation in a variety of forms. It's highlighting Lakers, international salties, pleasure crafts, and cruise ships. Mayor Steele just had his mayor's report outlining the progress that we're making in terms of Viking cruise ships coming through, having work on our wall to have an increase in vessels. And so this is kind of highlighting all of the navigation that's coming through the canal. It also aligns with our strategic plan that's coming through in 2020 around economic development and tourism. Staff and different levels of government are working to increase our economy on the Welland Canal. This logo is also representative of our council, our staff, and the city that's moving forward, which is very similar to the vessel itself. The use of the blue is representative on branding initiatives that we are already seeing and wanting applied across the city. Staff are choosing signs and doing things because they just are drawn to blue, and so that's seeming to be what's constantly being applied rather than drawing the colors out of the current Sunset logo. The font as well that's used, there's consistency. So again, under public library, there's consistency in the font application. So if on our trucks, Public Works would be consistent with our logo as well. And some disadvantages, of course, stepping away from the tall ship image that has been a staple of the corporation's identity since before 2004. However, in 2020 and beyond, the local area sees fewer tall ships in Lake Erie or transiting through the Welland Canal, and rather it is much more common to see vessels, whether they are Lakers, the international salties, pleasure crafts, or cruise ships. Joe, do you have anything you want to add to the...
Hi. There's probably a lot I could say about branding, but I don't want to bore you with that. What I do want to say, though, is just even on my way in to Port Colborne, I'm not originally from this area. I'm originally from North Bay. And so for me coming into Port Colborne, the only times I've ever seen a tall ship was when I came to Canal Days. You know, when I walked in the building, I saw a number of logos. So even in this room here, there's over 17 uses of your logo. You have them all in front of you. You have them on the signs on the front desk here. There's different ones on the windows. And when the things that I heard today, just listening to general comments about what you all talked about, was that there were comments about quality, that we want Port Colborne to recognize quality with some of the things we do. There were comments about how having a proper plan is important. There was also comments about having, synergy among the staff and talking with the staff because they seem to know what's best. And so when I looked at the logo, I thought, okay, right now when we got hired on to do this project, there was no plan. There is no branding guideline. We have different people using the logo for different purposes at different times. And even from an outsider, when you think about quality, you want that brand to resonate. There's a reason why you have a brand with any company. There's a reason why it solidifies who you are. There's a reason why it's put in place. There's a reason why companies trademark that brand so no one else can use it. And so when we look at the current brand, we don't really have one in place. So it doesn't speak quality. It doesn't speak the identity, because that is a mixed message. When I drove in the city this afternoon, I saw these different signs in different places. And I didn't see consistency all the way through. Even walking in here tonight in this building, I didn't see consistency. And so I don't think it's necessarily an issue of what ship that is going to be picked or not. I think it's more of an issue that wherever you're at, you have to have something established. And that probably should have been established long ago as a brand guideline all the way through. But for example, if you go to print a logo on a t-shirt, we have to give that printer a specific file. And that specific file has to state exact colors. It also has to have a mathematical equation behind it so that when you blow that logo up, it can translate without looking pixelated or fuzzy. And so when that happens, that file has to be established as this is the specific file we need. And so some of those things are not in place, which makes it very difficult, and people have to do alternate things to try to copy that image to make it work. Instead of just having that consistent file, that consistent message, with a branded guideline, basically what happens is we give a document to the printer or anyone that needs to use that file and says, here's everything you need to know about it. Here's the recommended spacing we want around it. Here's the fonts that we recommend. Here's the colors that we say that need to be used. Here's the direction that you're supposed to use the logo, and here's the direction that you're not allowed to use the logo. And some of those things haven't been in place. So just when I find it encouraging that we're in this process right now, but I also encourage you to not take a stance and say, well, let's use what we currently have, because you can't. It's a difficult process to use what you currently have because you don't have something in place. So either if you're going to use the design you have, it would still need to be fixed to make it usable. And that can't actually happen with the color scheme you have. For example, a gradient in a logo, you can't reproduce in the way that I just said. So some of those things you have to get away from because they can't transpire into normal use every day. So even when we think about the online cases with social media, if you want to use that logo on your Facebook page or your Twitter page, you have to change that file to be a square. Your logo currently isn't square. You don't have an alternate version for that. If we want to embroider it on a shirt, we have to get away from the gradient because you can't embroider a gradient properly. So there's lots of things that you're going to run into that if even using the current brand that you would still need to be fixed.
So moving on, as Joe's great comments, before we get there, I know there's, since this last council meeting, a lot of memes going around, a lot of public discourse, and as a communications officer, I have to read every Facebook message, every tweet, and every comment, and so I definitely have seen this. I have spoken with Symmetric. There isn't a huge concern. One of the positives out of it is the lock is great local business that's run by young, up-and-coming entrepreneurs. And I like to think that we are both seeing the city as the same way. We are both seeing it as with vessels and moving forward. There are drastic differences between both logos, which is why we don't see a concern. And as Joe's already alluded to, part of the $12,000, part of this project is the logo. It's the branding guidelines, but it's also trademarking. And so once we have an identified brand, they're assisting us with the trademark process. But if you're concerned about this logo, you also have to be concerned about this. This is actually a current company that is based out of Montreal, that has an office in St. Catharines, whose vehicles are continuously in Port Colborne. We had staff recently see one of these in the city driving by and had a second take. I saw this truck 3 years ago, and that's when I said that we needed to really start working on our brand guidelines and making sure that everything we do, regardless of what it is trademarked. There are similarities of this to before 2004, where the lines that surround Sea Golf, which is what Port Colborne used to have, another line underneath. The similarities to this is no different than the similarities to that. And so this is what's proposed, but this is actually what's currently happening. So option 2 that's presented in your council package is exactly the same as option 1, replacing out the vessel with the traditional schooner. So the advantages to this logo is pretty much all the same as the advantages of option A. And obviously the use of the tall ship is the continuation of what people recognize about Port Colborne's current logo and the current brand, but following in line with everything that Joe's spoken to in terms of consistency, in terms of color use, in terms of application. However, the disadvantage to this logo as well still is that it does not represent the corporation's current vision and initiatives that staff and council are currently working on with respect to strategic plan. And then your option 3 is what our current logo is, with not much change in application, as just change in font because as expressed at the last council meeting, the current font that we have does not meet accessible guidelines, and so it also has some issues. The only advantage to this logo is that it's identifiable as the corporation's current logo. Some disadvantages is the colors do not represent the majority of the assets that are currently in place across the corporation, including signage, which I've previously shown you. The logo as a whole does not represent the corporation's current visions and initiatives that staff are currently working on through the strategic plan. And in the graphic design is the gradient that Joe had currently referred to. A color gradient is a range of colors ordered linearly with the integration giving a smooth and progressive transition. This particular sunset and the gradient is causing us significant issues as we're trying to have applications, primarily with embroidery, which is traditionally what we're having in a lot of our clothing application. It's also with a lot of digital, and we're having some issues. The other disadvantage with this logo is that Sugarloaf Merino will have to adopt this logo. We can no longer have two separate colors and two separate brand identities. So Sugarloaf Merino will have to adopt this color. Port Colborne Historical Marine Museum, who have currently been using the blue version as well in their logos, will also have to adopt this logo. So if moving forward with this logo, these are the colors that the entire corporation will have to do. And at the end, so if this is chosen, there will be no more blue. And in closing, whether we keep with this or we change our branding, and no matter what way we look at it, it's not going to cost us more or save us more, because regardless, in order to implement our brand across the corporation, there are going to have to be changes that are made, whether it's to switch out blue that's already in place to assist with this branding, or switch out the branding that is the sunset gradient to the blue in order to make it work. So the $12,000 that's part of this project is Symmetric is going to be helping us create our guidelines. They're going to be helping us create the templates and the trademarking. Then the implementation is going to be drawn out through our current operating budget. So it is not asking for any additional money in the budget or in any outside expenses. And that's all.
Does that mean we got to change our flag to the German flag? Well, here it is, folks.
We would need to alter our flag, which has been, that is the logo that is actually on our flag, is the logo that was pre-2004. So even when our branding changed in 2004, a lot of application continued and didn't change, which included our corporation's flag.
Okay. Questions on the report? Councillor.
Thank you, Worship. I might switch every once in a while into some of the things that are in the report, only because it was also discussed that way going on. So I'm just going to go through my comments on your presentation and then a final comment. So thank you very much for the report, and I'll make a statement now, but then we're going to go back through this report. Joe, is it?
Yeah.
Joe, you made a very concise observation that I know I can live with, and perhaps members of this council could live with. I think it's, for my doing, I think it's irrefutable that you need all these standards, the fonts. In other words, I agree with just about everything you said, except you said, if we get it back to, if the issue is just whether the ship is on it or not. Frankly, when you take out those other things that I'm agreeing with you with, it actually is coming back to something like that. Because you're in the business of logos, and certain things are iconic. And in my view, in that flag, in logo, in the last logo here, we have the ship. I kind of like the all blue with the ship, but I'm going to hold judgment on that because I think everybody needs to weigh in on this. So to go through your report. So I think we all get behind the concept of branding. I think we all get behind the concept that we're all over the board. Truth be known, and Bill, I'm not sure if you were on this council, but the spindles on the wheel were things we brought up, I know, 10 years ago, because everybody had a different amount of spindles on it. So I think case is closed, one, decided on, you can't have all these versions of the logo. Nobody, I think, in business, whether it's private sector, public sector, is counterintuitive to that. I know you were being facetious, Michelle, when you said this was my favorite one, because sometimes a picture tells 1,000 words, but sometimes you actually have to stand like real people in front of the sign and see the quality of it and the look of it rather than on a picture. I will note that the sandblasted park sign that I mentioned that I do like and everybody seems to like is not in this list of options that we have. Now, we'll get through all these. Through that. Agree with you on the website. Change can be scary, yes. So, I don't know if this was convenient or not, but basically, on the sports and business logos, they often change and update their logos. It's called merchandising, and it's also selling millions of dollars worth of t-shirts, banners, etc., etc. On the corporations, I think there can easily be a confusion by and naming. The municipality is a corporation. It's a corporation under the Municipal Act. It's a corporation because it has to act with the procedures of finance and everything else like a corporation. But a municipality and provinces and the federal government are different in a lot of ways, I think, than business. So interestingly enough, all of your examples of evolution of logos are all business related, except for the province of Ontario. And I would argue that that logo, after about 50 years, is, as can happen in government, partly refresh, sometimes political. There's lots of reasons for what happened there. Don't disagree with it, like it, it's really not much of a change. So I guess what I'm saying is here, a lot of your rationale is supporting Appendix B, which was your choice. So now, if we look at the report, and I won't go into it because that's for further discussion, but basically what it is there's a lineup of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bullets supporting the one that you put out. And so that's not a surprise that you're supporting that, but here's the conclusion I come to all of this is this logo is pretty iconic. I think it's something we'd like to keep around for a number of years. The report and the presentation, the words used, talk about what business is doing. It talks about council and staff's vision. And I just put out the fact that I think it should have saw a lot of the public's vision and the public's input. And to your point of even on these business-like ones, I mean, a lot of businesses who changed their logo have used the focus group. Did we use one? Basically, to me, the process of deciding the logo part, not the gradients, not the fonts, not the idea of consistency, hasn't passed through, in my view, the lenses that it should have. So we talk about in the report, and you've talked about it, council's vision, city's vision, I've said that. But you also talk about the economic direction. This hasn't gone to the Economic Development Committee. It hasn't gone to the public. Has it gone to any of the marine businesses? Has it gone to potential customers of Port Colborne? Those are the input that I want to see. So again, I'm 90% of the way here, but process, I really think we dropped the ball on this. And I do think that this is the people's logo and that they should have some input on it. Now, I've had more questions come to me about this, actually, than I did about the cannabis issue. The cannabis issue, we spent $10,000 and in 5 weeks got the proper kind of survey, people's input, businesses' input, and we came out with a solution, and I thought it got decided pretty well. And nobody could say it wasn't transparent, and nobody could say there was no input in it. But right now, we've come up with something that, and now, is time of the essence because of running out of stationery, ordering signs. Not good enough, in my view. This is a 10 or 20-year decision, and it should have some public input. It should have some business input. It should have the Economic Development Department's input. It should have the marine industry. It should have all that input in it. And so when we get into this, and I won't do it now because I believe that everybody should have a chance to comment, because I'm not going to use the D word now because I want to hear what everybody else has to say. But I think this process could get to the same end game on 90% of what you've said, Joe, but it didn't get through the prism that I'd like to see it through. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Clayliff?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a question for you, Michelle. I just wondered, when you talked about the $12,000 and coming out of the grant funding, I know there's going to be a lot of additional funding you said that will come from operation budget and that. There was a 35% left of that 700,000. Is any of that available to put towards this, or is it strictly that 12,000 and the rest comes from operations?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council Clerk, I would have to defer that to the city clerk, as she's the one that's operating the budget for that grant.
Madam Clerk?
Madam Clerk.
Yes, we only put aside $12,000, but we will definitely look at more initiatives, and if more funding needs to come forward for that, we do have the budget.
Thank you. So then I can assume basically that some of these things, I think we talked about before, if we do a rebranding, wouldn't happen until certain things were worn out or had to be renewed, and we would work through it on that kind of basis?
Yes.
Clerk?
Through the mayor, the plan is not to redo everything at once. So even as business cards diminish, then you replace with the new standard. That way it doesn't waste the materials we currently have. Examples, envelopes. Right now we're kind of ordering the bare minimum, knowing that this rebranding is going to happen. So our big order for the year will wait until rebranding happens.
So then if we were to follow what Councillor Bruno said and kind of look at this a little bit through a different prism through the community, we still have enough supplies. We could go on until we could get this settled before we ordered in bigger quantities.
I think we can do whatever council wishes. I will say there are a number of kind of projects that are on hold and waiting for the rebranding. So whatever's decided, staff will want to move as fast as possible on this.
Thank you.
Yep. Mr. CAO?
Through your worship to Councillor Bruno, I did want to address, or not leave unaddressed, I guess, your comment about a focus group. We did use a focus group, so I understand there's some questions about process here, and some of them I think are valid. There was not a public consultation. There was not a council consultation. Our intention at staff at the outset of this process was to bring you a finished product and have you approve it. Because of the referral, we're back here with options, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that process. But we did use a focus group. It was a focus group of staff. And I understand this might not come across very good, but I'm going to try to say this as tactfully as I can. We didn't look at this as the citizens' logo. We didn't look at this as the logo of the place that people live or that people open their business. Or operate their business. We looked at this as the city's logo as an agency, council's logo for letterhead, staff's logo on their business card, staff's logo on the breast of their shirt when they get logoed merchandise. We don't want, choosing my words carefully, we don't want to see this logo on somebody's garage sale poster. We don't want to see this logo on somebody's personal shirts, their baseball team, or so on, if they're not affiliated with the city. This is our corporate logo, and it's different. We sell flags. Yes, you can buy one of these flags from City Hall on the first floor and fly it at your house on your flagpole or on your boat. That's okay. We don't want folks walking around at Canal Days being confused for city employees. and so on. So this was very much chosen by staff, for the city as an agency. And for that reason, the same as I wasn't consulted on the 3 men in a hot tub that Ontario used or uses, same way I wasn't consulted on the local insurance brokers, logo for their letterhead. Nobody asked their customer if the logo is okay. We did not ask the public. And I understand how that maybe could look like it was a flawed process, but we did look at this as our ownership of our image as an agency. So I'm not sure if that provides any clarity to council or if council still wants to consider alternates. Having said that, if there was any decision to make a decision later rather than today, trying not to use that word, staff would need some direction on what that process would look like. What would be the difference between deciding something today and deciding something in a month or 2 months? What would be our marching orders to go back and bring something different to council? Because if there are no marching orders, you would have the same report back in front of you in a month or 2 months.
Further questions to the presentation? Councillor Wells?
I've been through a number of, through your worship, to Michelle and to the rest of council, I've been through a number of branding changes on large companies. And usually there's a purpose for that. And we've seen evolutions, and Michelle and Joey did a great job of presenting those things. One of the biggest things that I'm finding a difficulty here is understanding our clear vision. I don't know where it's been stated, our clear vision. We're still working on it, so I really don't know what to compare an image to. So my problem I'm having is, and I think this is part of the problem we're having with the public, is they don't see where we're going. They don't see the vision. So they can't associate the logo to the vision. But they remember our old logo, they remember the schooner, they remember the wheel, but they can't see forward. So I think it's very important in a branding exercise that we display the vision, that we show people where it's going to go and where it's going to go. And then that logo will represent that where we're going. So my difficulty with this is just that vision, that clarity around that vision that we have not had yet.
Okay. Second. Yep. Go ahead.
Sure. Through your worship to Councillor Wells, very briefly. That is great commentary. Council itself is 9 people. 9 people have 9 different voices, 9 different opinions, 9 different schools of thought, I guess. That vision has never been crystallized. There is a forthcoming strategic plan. I don't suggest holding this off until after that, but that is an option council may choose. I have promised in the past, or offered in the past, a sneak preview of the strategic plan. The strategic plan is going to be based on several pillars. One of those pillars is growing revenue, and parts of those are economic development initiatives, tourism initiatives, I wrote them down, finding efficiencies in government operations and so on. And hopefully that will lend towards crystallizing 9 directions into one direction for the whole city. But having said that, I do want to take a step back. It's been almost a year and a half that since this council was voted in October of 2018. And I know where I sit in my desk at City Hall, and I think I speak for others, we've seen the vision roll out from the top layers, roll out from council and roll out from the mayor's office. And to me, the vision is, if I may say so myself, if I can put words in council's mouth, it is the cruise ship initiative, it is industrial development, it is land along the canal being unlocked for the first time by the Seaway and allowed to be marketed by the city and bring in new employment lands on stream. I know that may not be the unanimous vision of 9 people, but it's the direction that I think we feel when we come into work in the morning and spend our 8 or 9 or 10 hours, unless it's a council night more, working on executing council's vision. That direction is going to come from the strategic plan. We are not there yet, but that is, I think, what staff is referring to when they stand at the podium and say, the vision, the vision, the vision. It's that these 9 folks have given us, I don't know, a change, a breath of fresh air to go in this direction, which is, in my opinion, not putting words in your mouth, an economic development driver initiative or vision. So if I misread the situation, you guys better tell me soon.
Questions? Question? Yeah, questions to staff, yes.
Through your worship to Michelle, would there be any extra costs if we don't make a decision today? Because it sounds like there might be a chance of this being a decision being made at a later date. And if we don't, would there be any costs that we aren't sure of because of the delay?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council Beauregard, there are some initial costs that I know of, and I'm not sure in terms of the cost of the delay, which our clerk could speak to, but we have currently signed on to work with the company on our website. The delay of that and the cost that we may incur based on those delays, based on delays through this project. We're also under the delays of the grant and fulfilling grant requirements, which is usually within timeframes. I can also defer over to Nicole, the manager of Parks and Recreation, as she currently has a grant in place for addition of and replacement of current wayfinding signs throughout the municipality. That grant is soon set to expire. If we're not sure and we're not clear on what exact logo or coloring we're placing on these wayfinding signs, unfortunately, she will be handing that money back to the government agency that's provided it. So there are those potential costs that we're currently losing. There's been some projects we've been able to transfer funds from the 2019 budget into 2020 as we knew this was coming that we've been projecting for. Staff have been very accommodated. Everyone has been aware and on board. So I've been receiving calls from staff in the operations department knowing that they're having to order decals for trucks. We're doing, as Amber's already alluded to, the bare minimum as some of these costs are going through operating. But a lot of it's not so much of the financial impact, it's the time impact and the impact on other projects and the rollout of those projects as a lot of it's delayed and pending on that.
Through your worship to council, it appears that there is some urgency in us making some type of decision at some point in time. And I think you all did a great job in terms of hiring our consultant to give us this brand and how we want to see Port Colborne moving forward. Second question I have for you is, once we do make a decision, how quickly will we roll out the ability to implement that whatever choice we make everywhere? Because as you said, in 2004 we had a different sign or design, and that's still present. And it's almost like we have layers, and they're continuing there. How do we get rid of all of it and just stay consistent?
My goal is to not be that long, through you, Mr. Mayor. But obviously, there's still obviously some financial. There's a lot of time in terms of changing everything over. That's not something that happens very quickly. My goal would be near the end of 2021 for a majority of the projects. It's also going to be a little bit of time. Once this is approved, Symmetric's team, Ryan, who's the designer, and Joe and the rest of his team are going to be sitting down, because then with the guidelines, it's going to be a quite lengthy document that's going into all the details. And there's still going to be some terms of application when we get to how everything's applied on signage and decals and cars and working through all of that. So even coming up with the guidelines is going to be a bit lengthy. There's obviously going to be some projects that are going to take the priority. The website being one of them is going to be our first priority in some of our upcoming publications. Our leisure guide is in the midst of publication right now. Currently, it's being designed under our current leisure guide template. If a decision is made by council tonight, we may be able to make a little shift before we get to print, so that would be the first replication of our new guideline. Our visitor's guide is in production as well right now, so those are where our focuses are probably going to be initially, and then start rolling out with all the signage, trucks, and some other initiatives by the end of 2021.
Councilor?
Through your worship, I just want to say, in terms of my preference, I did show initially when this item came up for discussion, I did show some favor towards the first option with the vessel and that moving forward. But I also seem a little conflicted because I do like option B with the schooner. I think it really, as Councillor Bruno raised earlier, it's everywhere, and that is really our brand, is that schooner. And I also like history, and that really stands, and that's just Port Colborne. So I'm conflicted. I like both those options. Blue is where it's at. White and blue, that's Port Colborne, at least as long as I've known. So that's where I stand.
Question, Councillor Clayliff?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, Eric has said it very well, because I'm very conflicted. I live on the canal, and I look at what's happening right now, and I can say, I like the new logo that you're presenting, and I think back over the years of the first canal days, and my heart goes out to the schooners. They're kind of a treat now to see them, because we don't see them as often. But it's a tough choice to say, you know, do you stick with that historical schooner piece or go with the new one? I know that that's the future where we're going, but it's a tough decision. But I am in favor of all the blue, what you're suggesting. I just think that we have to figure out which of the others we want. Thank you. Thank you for all your work on this, Michelle.
Thank you, Councilor. Just if we could direct questions to these guys before we start any debate here, just 'cause I don't want them standing there the whole night. Councilor, question?
I have a comment.
Oh, wait.
Not necessarily.
Any more questions to staff? Question to staff, Councilor.
Because I've heard a lot about timeframes and a lot of council decisions and how the report and the timeframe often coincides. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Nicole, could I get a copy of that application to the province and the deadline? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Okay, no further questions? Thanks, guys. Don't leave, but you can sit down. Councilor Bodnar, comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was trying to figure out what bothered me about this. And I think the CAO just came upon it, where, rightly or wrongly, it was the decision of staff to bring this forward as a almost completed thing. Here you go. That's it. And quite frankly, I hope this never happens again, where we're put in a position where we have limited options and we're called upon to make a decision that night, now the next council meeting. And it just doesn't feel right, or it doesn't, I don't know, it just isn't right. That's what I'll say, from me. I don't know how everybody else feels, but from me. So I prefer, going forward, that council has a look-see or something in a process like this. And I think Councilor Bruno said this, it's hopefully 10, 20 years, I don't know, before another person looks at the logo. So whatever we do now, so I get the timing. I've heard it before ever since I've been on council. We got to do this quick. There's a whole bunch of things depending on it. Well, then maybe we should have got this 2 months ago. I'll say that. So I'll wait to see what other people have to say. I don't know whether I can make a decision between these ones. I can certainly knock one off. But I'll wait to see where other people think this may go before I bring anything else up. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. To Councilor Wells' point, if we have, or can have, a quick view, snapshot of the strat plan, I also actually have a question that I forgot to ask Joe or Michelle, but it relates to Harry's point. As part of this whole branding exercise, part of that branding is also the message. So to Councilor Wells' point, it's understanding what that ultimate drive is. The other one is, if we're going to have a strap line, you know, is it the gateway to navigation? Is it business and lifestyle coincide? And that comes out of that strat plan. And to everybody else's point, it's part of this branding exercise. And guilty, I should have raised it 2 weeks ago, that we don't have that with this. But I still think that there's an opportunity to get that quick vision. I think we may be down to a couple choices here. I like one of those choices. But again, it's not tied up in, I mean, I still think there's an opportunity to even run this by, I'd love to run it at least by economic development. I'd love to run it by the Historical and Marine Museum. I'd love to run it by that staff. I'd love to run it by some customers who we say we're trying to reach. And that is that marine industry, as to what they think. And I can't help but think that that snapshot, running it by what I'll call key sectors or elements of the customers we're trying to release, can't be done within a couple weeks. So if I'm totally with Councillor Bodnar, and the days of this, it happens, this one didn't have to happen, that we're down to this deadline. So I'd like to see that snapshot. I'd like to get the feel from economic development, from the marine people in town and potential customers, and EDACT. So my request would be, well, I can't make the request without finding out through the CAO. Sure. Can that snapshot be done and how soon? Sure. I certainly think we could, that are on the Economic Development Commission, run that by them and at least get some of their feedback. Meet back up. I'm happy to call. I'm not the chair of that, but I'm happy to see if we can call that meeting. I think we could. I think others have expressed here. Yeah.
You could even just use email with that committee.
Right. I think
get it out quick.
Yeah. I think others have expressed teetering on two. We can't start this process over, but maybe we can salvage making it a little better and more fulsome. So I'll wait for the CEO's comment on.
Sure. Through your worship to Councillor Bodnar, the snapshot that I gave of the strat plan earlier is sort of the meat and potatoes component of it. It'll probably be, which some work has been done but not complete yet, on the sort of core values and vision of the city's strategic plan. I would say it's probably at the soonest, maybe a month from today, maybe the first council meeting in March. We have to get our consultant back in here to work with a team that we've assembled that doesn't include council members. So I don't know if we're going to be back at the drawing board on that. Yeah, it's a focus sort of group, cross departments, and so on, different levels of the organization. The exercise of museum staff and economic development staff did take place. I maybe would defer to Michelle to explain to us who actually was invited. And sometimes invitations were sent, participate in this focus group, but the employee chose not to participate, or for other reasons, scheduling and whatnot, couldn't participate. But I think those overtures were made internally. Externally, not so much.
Shaw?
Internally, when the focus group was being created and the work was started, emails were sent to directors of all departments, and the directors were asked to pick staff across the department or who they feel would have benefited from the exercise, especially because the application impacts staff across the organization, and I really wanted to make sure, since it is the corporation's logo, that there was staff from all levels. The museum was involved in the process. Through comments, the museum is on board with option 1, also on board with option 2, based on the historical aspect, obviously, but they did quite like option 1 as well. So that's where the vast from that took place. And just a comment in respect to presentation of different logos as well in terms of focus groups. So we did follow something very similar to how we did it with the Canal Days logo. The Canal Days logo, when it was designed and presented, also was a focus group. It was of the Canal Days committee only, which represented a couple councillors at the time, but majority of the committee members and staff, and then was presented as a final product at the end. So that's how there was no public consultation as well for the Canal Days logo when that process happened as well.
Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Maybe just to come back to my other question to put this all in a bow here. Joe or Michelle, So what do you think about the whole idea of, in this branding exercise, a strap line as to what, gateway navigation, there's been the lifestyle and business component, and there could be something that is also very marine orientated. So I don't know if that was something that ultimately would fall in someone's scope of work, because the brand usually catches that too, i.e. Nike, Coke, Pepsi. I could go on and on.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Bruno. So when the RFP or request for quote was put out for this original project, it was put out and pitched to Symmetric with the notion that we're currently working on our strategic brand, and we're also currently working on our mission, which is currently serving you to create an even better community. And that's currently what our mission is, and alluded to with the new strategic brand that a new mission would be coming out. Obviously, we had all of the strategic plan sessions, which includes council and staff. And so the vision for the city and the strategic plan is based on council and staff, which if our vision and our brand is the same, that's also a reasoning why there's no public consultation, because what the strategic plan is and where the city is going, which is the same way and representative of our logo. A tagline would also still be part of this and coming out of it. It's just, like I said, the timing of everything. Ultimately, if the grant funding hadn't been there, maybe the branding would have been a little delayed to line up a strategic plan, but I've been speaking with Scott and working through and making sure kind of where we're going and direction given to Symmetric is aligning with some of the items that are coming out of the strategic plan. So Scott and I have been in discussion to try and make sure that we're meeting those. Tagline definitely still is to come, since, like as I said, we would be looking to replace serving you to create an even better community.
Right. So the tagline is not imminent.
Correct.
Got it.
Yes.
That said, this is the wish of council, but I'm not so sure that, as Michelle has alluded to, and as the report has alluded to, I don't think there's much disagreement that what the strategic plan is focusing around. And so, to the CAO, do we need the completion of everything to go to that internal staff and come up with, like, I'd rather not wait a month. I'd rather see the Coles and Oates version of what the strategists and you guys put together as a result of our meeting. If it does take the month, I'm happy to live with the month, but I'm not sure whether you can. So I put it back in your court. It sounds like, to Harry's point, we can have this strat plan. We can have deliberations around that. We can have an EDAC meeting. We can talk to some customers. But can you do it within the month if you get the vote at the end of the next, 2 meetings from now?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Bruno, a month would be very difficult. There have been other municipalities that have done consultations to the extent that you're asking for, which has resulted in 51 revisions of the logo. That will definitely, 51 revisions, take longer than a month. So it's what potentially we would be looking at, and what particular you'd be looking at from, I guess I'm looking for more clarification in terms of what you'd be looking for from the consultations with these committees, whether you're looking for them to kind of vote on one of the options or looking at suggestions to make alterations to it, only because if we're getting into alterations, it's possible. It's just potential number of revisions and the time that would take, it would be outside of the month.
Councillor?
No, I was looking to much simplify that. As the mayor said, call a meeting of EDACT. If you have the answers from Historical Museum, that's already
that's done.
checked
that's
off.
Completed. Yep.
We can talk to some marine folks, and I think we can all ask a couple of businesses or two what they think. But I don't want to elongate this, but I also want some input from our customers. So, if you can do that by the next council meeting, I know I can, in terms of who I want to ask.
Can, you said?
I can, yes. So I'd be happy with next meeting.
That's the 24th.
Yeah.
EDAC is next week. EDAC is next week.
Yeah. Well, we can just bring this report back. I mean, it depends what council wants to take out of what's here. Do you want changes to, I mean, I think we gotta get, if we're gonna give direction to staff, they gotta know exactly where they're going, guys. You know, and I think the questions that staff has asked you is the fact that, do you wanna go with one or two of these to go out to a couple of the committees and some businesses in town? Or do you want a whole revamping of this? Like, I think we need to leave this room tonight, what direction you wanna move. Or do you wanna send all three? I mean, Councillor Botter?
I don't think I'm looking for a revamp at this point. I think the marine theme is in there someplace. Personally, I don't need a total revamp, put a submarine on here or something like that. I just don't see that being a necessity. I wouldn't mind the consultation that Councillor Bruno's looking for. I think if it's not next meeting, because we'd have to have something in by this Friday, right, to go, you know, so.
Well, what I was saying, Councillor, is you can leave this report. All you're doing is referring it back as it is for comment. They can bring back that comment the next meeting. The report's not gonna change other than the comments from the people we go out to. If you're not looking for change, then I would say either narrow this down to two or tell staff to give them all three and take the comments on all three.
I'm good with giving them all three. I think the extra set of eyes on it may alleviate some problems with, you know, maybe we're all on the same page, I don't know. But I think I'll leave it to Councillor Bruno with the R word or the D word, but you know, I think we can make this work, if not for next meeting, certainly the meeting after.
Councillor Borgard? Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, if council doesn't like the referral or deferral, then they don't vote for it, and then we, you know, live with tonight's decisions. So.
Councillor Borgard.
Through your worship, I really see it that we only have two options. You either go with A, the new vessel, which is going forward, and more realistic to what Port Colborne is nowadays. Or we go with B, the typical look that we're accustomed to and Port Colborne is accustomed to. I really see those are the only two options. These are the color schemes that really fit Port Colborne. Option C, the presenter already explained how really that does not fit Port Colborne, and we've already learned about like the AODA compliancy, and those colors are Halloween colors. Those aren't Port Colborne colors. So really it's A and B, and and it's really about whether or not we feel comfortable going forward in a futuristic view, or we just stick with what we're comfortable with and stick with the schooner. That's how I see it.
Councillor?
I guess, can I get on this? So through your worship, I just want to go back to what Councillor Bodner had to say about the process that was followed. And I guess I can take those comments back and apply them on our day-to-day sort of operations and our future staff reports as they come forward, specifically around council being sort of strong-armed into a decision-making position. But I want to say, you know, I walk around City Hall, I walk around the other buildings that we have, and this is one of the things that staff struggle with the most with council. This council and past councils is where and when staff's role ends and council's role starts. And I really think that in this case, and in fact, if it's okay, I'll use an analogy. If we're buying a fire truck, we go out there and we get the fire truck quotes, and we use firefighters and the fire chief and the budget amount and the amount of the bid and the quality of the fire truck, and we bring back a recommendation. And we say, buy the fire truck from company A. And sometimes we will say, company B also bid and their bid was this much, and company C bid and their bid was this much. You know, but we don't really bring a council member or a couple of council members onto the selection committee or the bid review committee. We don't really engage them in the actual, we don't let council members test drive fire trucks or, you run hoses and so on. And I think really that's the process that we tried to follow here. Should we have said in the very first report, there's 3 options, A, B, and C, and we recommend A, and if you want to vote against A, you could vote for B or C, or send us back to the drawing board? Yeah, I guess we could have, and that's on me because I didn't approve the report that way. Maybe I should have done that. But what we did do, and this is for all of council, not Councillor Bodnar, what we did do was bring you what we thought was the best option. It's the staff recommended option. And to echo Councillor Beauregard, I think I'm hearing today from the staff here that there only is one other option. To go back to the public or back to a couple of vendors, how many is enough? If I go to 5 vendors and they say they like a certain one, are we gonna get an email from the 6th vendor that says I wasn't asked? Are we gonna hear that we should have gone to 10 or 30 vendors or stakeholders? I'm not sure. The purpose, I thought, sorry, not to be too bold, but the purpose I thought of getting down to 9 council members was that those 9 people would take the leadership on making a decision by proxy on the 18,000 residents or the couple of hundred businesses. If it's a case of you guys want to go back and consult some of your constituents, maybe that's a process, because maybe we can defer it and bring it back exactly the way it is, and you will have done some soul searching and some question asking out in the community, whether that's public or private, like residents or at the corporate level, and then maybe you'll be in a better position to make an informed decision. But I do think, and I agree with what staff here have said, which is if we let people tinker, we'll be talking about bump outs and garbage cans and benches on the downtown CIP before we approve our logo, I think.
Councillor Bruno?
Collect my thoughts. To me, common sense would dictate that there are certain things that come before a council in a municipality that rise above whether in a Canal Days committee we're going to raise beer by 50 cents or a fire truck. And so we are the elected representatives of the city. We are here to make those decisions. But there are certain decisions that come up in a municipality. One we can remember just from this term was the whole cannabis issue. I don't relate that to fire trucks and amending everything else through public consultation. This is an iconic logo that's being changed after many, many years. Last revision 204, but fundamentally, probably back to 1900 potentially. So I can't point out on an ad hoc basis here tonight what rises to the level of an important decision in a municipality that's fundamental to a lot of things. But it doesn't involve every decision that operations or other departments make. I think that the things that rise to the occasion should be relatively evident, and if they're not, I think there's an opportunity for that discussion with the mayor or council. So fortunately, I think that was a poor analogy. But so I'm not looking for a committee of 18,000. But in this particular case, I feel it's an important enough issue. It's something that's been around for 50 to 100 years and hopefully is around for the next 20 or so. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Danch.
Because I don't have a lot to say. I think the blue's boring. There's no pizzazz. I like the color in our old logo, and as far as I'm concerned, it looks good to me.
Councillor Wells.
Through your worship to Michelle, this one is not so much on our subjective acceptance or likes or that, but this is more to the logistics perspective of changing our brand. Do we have the policies, the procedures, the guidelines, everything that's necessary to ensure that that image that we finally decide on is what we're going to get when our staff go out and place the paint job on the truck, when they go out and buy the fire truck and put the emblem on it, or have the stone engraved?
That is what is being developed when we have a decision from council, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. So what happens is we don't have policies in place and we don't have applications on how the logo needs to be done when it's gone out to be put on a truck or otherwise, because I'm not quite sure what logo we're going with right now and how that application is going to be. If we go with option B, A or B, it'll be very different from application of option C. However, that is part of this $12,000 project. It's not just this logo that you're seeing on a screen. The team at Symmetric is helping us create that brand guideline, the policies, the procedures on how that logo will be implemented and applied. And ultimately what happens in my role moving forward is I'm referred to as the brand police. So basically, if there is improper application, improper use, and then that's where I step in to make sure and all approvals and things for the rebrand go through my approvals and vetted against the branding guidelines and policies to make sure that everything that we purchase moving forward meets the criteria that we have set out.
Counselor?
To add to that then is, if we don't have the policies to roll this out right now, and we don't have, the assurances that we're going to be able to develop this, then if we gave you an image tonight, you couldn't roll it out anyway, until you put those in place and have that established.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Wells, if and when a decision is made tonight, I would be contacting Symmetric, which he would already know, first thing in the morning to begin the policy production. No, nothing would be drastically done. When it comes to something like the leisure guide is very minimal in terms of its logo and a color application. So that is on a smaller scale as opposed to some other things that are needed. So that's where we begin working on the policy and the implementation. But again, as we've mentioned, due to time restrictions, the policy will be developed as we're doing some projects just to get things started, particularly, like I said, the leisure guide and the website.
Counselor?
And final question through you, Your Worship. This would probably go to Joe. How long would it take you to develop all the policies and procedures we would need to ensure that our staff, our service providers are all giving us the image we want?
So that actually goes in part of the design. So on the design that you'll see on the screen, we've actually outlined the specific fonts, the specific colors, and everything that we want to use. So in creating a revision, that process gets thought out through that. So we actually go through that process when we're actually designing and developing that at the same time. So once one is decided, then we put the policies into writing and deliver that piece.
And how long would that take, Joe?
For approved one or something new?
For an approved one. If we approve this one here, how long would it take you to have the policies so we can distribute to our staff, to our vendors, and to the like?
You were probably looking about a week.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Bodnar?
Clarification, Mr. Mayor, through to Joe or Michelle. Option 3 on there, the colored one, is that doable, or did I hear, because I heard somebody say it isn't doable. Is that a thing, or are we just looking at something we shouldn't be looking at?
So this one was based off of what currently you have in place. It is not our recommendation because of the color scheme. So anytime we have a gradient like that, it becomes very difficult to manipulate that logo in other forms. So embroidery is a great example. You can't really go from those amount of color shades, right, to do the gradient. There's multiple color shades all the through. So that means multiple pieces of thread. So when you're actually trying to embroider that specifically, it becomes very costly. And sometimes it can't even be done at all. So this was based on the direct requirement of the RFP, but then we said that it is not recommended. Also, it probably wouldn't adhere to AOD standards if we have to place text on top of it because of the different gradient patterns.
Counselor?
Was that a yes or no?
That's a no.
Thank you, Counselor. can ask, yeah.
I'm just saying, if it's not recommended, and it's not on my coat, but it is, why is it even on the screen?
Because that's what
Through you,
council
Mr. Mayor, to
asked
Councillor Danch, based on the feedback from the last council meeting and trying to get an understanding of what council was looking for, there was some consensus that we liked the current logo that we have. However, because the text itself of Port Colborne didn't meet AOTA, we changed the text to give an idea of what it would look like. However, it's still not a recommended option.
That was direction of council.
So take it off the screen.
If somebody wants to put that forward, please do so.
I think it just happened.
You want to make that motion, Councillor, to remove item
I
3?
think we make a motion that we take that off the screen and disregard the colored one because it doesn't seem to be something that's recommended anyways.
Can I get a seconder to that? Councillor Beauregard? So this is to remove option 3. Does everybody understand that? It's moved and seconded. Do you have that, Madam Clerk? Okay. All those in favor of removing item 3? That's unanimous. No, it's not. One against, yeah. So it's carried.
See, so those little guys that are making that stitchy lines and stuff like that, they can put all those colors into that.
It's not the same. Yellow falls around. Besides, you got a nice gray jacket. Try it on green. Doesn't work. I'm just saying because I've got green.
Sure, it's on that.
I won't comment on that one. Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. I think if we're down to 2, there's been lots of good talk about the new age and Councillor Beauregard's part, the iconic schooner. If 2 weeks isn't going to make a difference, in other words, we can do it, then we have those 2 choices. We can talk this amongst concerned citizens, businesses, like everything else, and come back with that decision in 2 weeks. So I'll move that we move this forward to the next meeting for a decision.
Okay, so
Without, as you pointed out, without changing the report.
Okay, so then I've got a mover to that. So in essence, we are referring this back to staff to gather some information with the help of council to bring this exact report with options A and B only, to make a decision on those 2 options only at the February 24th meeting. Can I get a seconder to that? Councillor Wells. Any questions? Or there's no debate on it, but any questions as far as what we said for the referral? Or clarification more than questions?
So through your worship, if Councillor Bruno could just give staff some advice, I think Michelle some advice on what the expectations are of her. Or is it specifically sort of like you and I were talking about a chance for council members to kick some tires out in the community and formulate some opinions? Is there an expectation that staff are gathering some survey or public consultation data over those couple of weeks?
Councillor Bruno.
Yeah. Other than potentially facilitating ECDev, but that's a meeting that's already happening, so I would say no.
Okay. All right. So Michelle, before I go to the vote, so it's coming back the 24th. The only change to this report will be the deletion of option 3, or C, however you want to put it. And then council will get you their remarks from business and citizens prior to, I'd say by the 21st, so that you can include them as part of that report as an appendix. Is that fine, Madam Clerk? I know it's not there, but it will be remarks coming back. We can add those as an appendix.
Is it an addendum, you mean?
Addendum.
Yes, we could do an addendum to add the comments by next Friday.
Okay, so that's the 21st.
Just a clarification.
Yep.
So if the report's staying the same, it doesn't have to be in on staff. If I'm hearing that you want what feedback we get, are you? And by the
Well, you should
normal,
be.
Yep, I'm just concerned about the normal deadline cuts out a.
No, because the report itself is the same. We can add it as an addendum item, Madam Clerk.
We can do an addendum to include the comments. I think it does need to take note staff time, so maybe by next Wednesday they would need to be submitted to the staff.
So by the 19th. Is that fine?
Yeah, I mean, we may have some trailing ones, but I think they can be verbalized that came in after.
Sure.
I'm just concerned
Yep.
about being able
No.
to use that 2 weeks.
Yep, no, that's fine.
Fully, thank you.
Okay. Everybody set? Everybody understands this? Staff, you understand this? Okay, CAO? Okay, all those in favor? That's unanimous, thank you. Thank you, staff. No, Counselor. Item number 2, Counselor Wells.
Community and Economic Development Department, Parks and Recreation Division, Report 2020-21, subject equipment and staffing changes within Parks 2020 budget request.
Seconder for this? Counselor Bodnar. Counselor Wells. You want to hear from staff?
Thank you, Your Worship. Some questions through you to Nicole, I believe. You alluded to, or in the report, it alludes to roughly about $100 savings a month. And it also refers to this as a pilot project. So I'm a little confused here. First of all, in that in 2018, I believe the approval was given to staff directed to implement a program. And it wasn't a pilot program, it was go ahead and do it. At least that's what I understand in the report. I may be wrong. And then you refer to a pilot program that was done in 2019, and now you're asking, now I believe it's being requested for another pilot program. So I'm a little confused on that, the referencing to pilot programs. I'm also asking if you could clarify that for me. And then a little bit more financial background on this, because there was really no financial statements or financial comparisons between previous and the pilot project that was done. I can't really see the benefit at this point in time of going one way or the other for $100 a month when that may be managed with contractors. So maybe on just those 2 items, Nicole, the clarification on the type of program that we've done in 2019 and what's proposed in 2020, and then the financial side of it.
Before you start, Nicole, Mike, do you want to come up front? So you can help in any information. Either side, doesn't matter.
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor
Nicole.
Wells and the rest of Council. So in 2018, we approached Council to offer a pilot project in 2019. In 2019, the pilot project completed. We deemed it successful, which I'll allow Mike to speak to some of the questions specifically, what you were talking about efficiencies towards, and now are requesting in the 2020 budget that we roll this program out as ongoing operations, moving away from third-party contractors.
So some of the efficiencies you're not going to see just on the grass pilot project. So what we've done is we've gone into a rental program with our equipment, and that's a 3-year term. So after the 3-year term, the equipment has a buyback period of, say, 90% if you're going with Kubota, 80% for John Deere, and so on and so on. So at the end of the 3-year term, your sale of that equipment, because you now own it, that money is generated back into your fleet budget. So although you don't see that up front, our return cost to that equipment that we're going to turn over after 3 years was money already spent towards a contractor. So if you, excuse me, if you spend $150,000, say, on a contractor, and we're at that mark with our equipment and our manpower, you never see that buyback from equipment. So what that number is in 3 years from now, I project it to be somewhere in the $50,000 range. But the other savings are to the winter operations. So the second part of the pilot project is snow removal. So snow removal is also another piece where we've eliminated a contractor from coming in and doing our valet, other areas of town. So it's another piece that's not, you don't see it in the grass, although all the budgetary requirements for the grass were strictly for manpower. You're seeing the costs associated with that through that budget. The money that we're saving for not hiring out a third-party contractor for snow removal is over and above what we're doing with grass. So for instance, the $30,000 that we paid to third-party contractors for other services that we provide, whether it be trees, tree removals or snow removal purposes. Those are other savings that are yet to come. So I'll elaborate a little bit more on that. So for instance, I now have a crew of 4 instead of a crew of 2. So after the storm, we had a lot of tree work still to do. So we rented a piece of, we rented an aerial device and we did all the work in-house. Now, if I was to take those costs and cost it out towards a different third-party contractor, you're looking at anywhere between $15,000 and $18,000, where we managed to do that work for $2,900 for the aerial truck rental. So those are all savings that you don't see, but it's only because within our management of our operation that we're finding those savings. So you'll see them in different areas. You'll see them in our general parks kind of budget type of thing.
Counselor?
I believe that's what I'm alluding to, is that, you're asking for some budget approvals, which we haven't even seen the budget yet, but there's not enough substance behind that, even though you have it, for us to see, to recognize those savings. All we see is that, we did a program and it was successful, but now we need more staff, and we're going to buy a $17,000 trailer for $18,000. I don't know if that was a mistake or not in the report, but again, it just, to me, there was just some things that didn't answer my questions in the report. That one of the main ones being the financial comparison. A good example of this is operations in the 2019 budget did the same thing. I'm all for taking in-house the work, because we then become the master, if you will. We control when we can get it done, how we do it, when our people are working, and we have a much better handle of it that way. So operations did that last year when they leased the Great Hall, and I'm familiar with the buybacks and that. But at that point in time, when we looked at it, we had a good comparison. This is what we're doing today, this is what we plan to do, and this is our savings. And I just didn't see that in the report, okay?
Sure. Councillor Botter?
Thank you. Is your mic on, Mike? Just that, you're a little hard to hear. Thank you. So did you figure when you were doing the financials, did you figure like the legacy costs for employees coming in, the pension and everything like that? Was that all figured in there? Again, we didn't really see that, but just so maybe to Councillor Wells' point, all those things you just told us, if they were in the report, it would have made it a little easier to really see the advantage of doing that. So if it does come forward again, if a little more meat could be put in it, it would be great. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Borgard?
Through your worship to staff, what was the response time to dealing with issues like grass cutting? Say if we had an issue, councillors around the table had an issue, and we asked you to do it, was it quicker to get them done as opposed to having a contractor and having to deal with them?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, in-house, as soon as you get the complaint, we could address it immediately. Accordingly, and a third-party contractor, you'd have to get in touch with their supervisor, find out their schedule. They might not even be in town because they split the city up within other areas or school boards, cuts and whatnot. So they may not be able to address. So say if a complaint comes in for, say, the marina, we need a marina cut at a certain time. It was difficult for me to try to get them to manage that before the weekend, so to speak. And so in-house, we've tried to manage those key areas at certain times. But if a complaint came in, we usually adjust it immediately.
Okay. So through your worship, there is obviously a monetary cost that we have to always pay attention to, but there is sometimes there's other things that we need to consider, such as the value of being able to be responsive and quick, and to make sure that our city always looks nice. So that's my comment.
Councillor Bruno, then Councillor Danch.
Thank you, Worship. A year before sort of reading the report and talking to Mike, I was, where students go back and the grass still grows, but if you can head it off at the front end, kudos to all of us, and the city looks better earlier. So my question is, why not more students earlier? Why a full-time seasonal employee versus maybe 2 students, and this one making 3? If it rains, they can work in another department in the city. I mean, I don't think we'll have a lack of work for them, even if it's not in cutting grass, and they get off to a better start, not just next year, but every year going forward. So why did you elect to go with 1 student and 1 seasonal, as opposed to we can maybe get 2 students for the?
Mainly because of the equipment that's involved with the operation. So the trailer we have is a fairly large trailer, but the tractor is also pulling a very large mower. If I have one of my full-time employees off and there's only 1 full-time employee with 2 students, I can't safely put the student on that and expect them to run a piece of equipment, especially a 13-foot bore or towing a 20-foot trailer. It's a fairly large trailer. So as a management piece, I think it's more of protecting our assets and trying to manage it in-house. Although I have proposed as well to start the students earlier, which is a different proposal for them to start at an earlier date for gardening purposes and just overall help, which frees me to take a temporary staff to do that.
So just
So
a
it's
point
a
of
realignment.
clarification on this, Mike?
Pardon me?
To the counselor, our hires are done by the end of February normally so all the ones that are coming back, they're coming back, but any new hires, our HR is done by the end of February. So I think your question is not that we're losing the best or we're not hiring the best. I think what you really want to see here is that once they're hired, is what's their earliest start date from the date they get either out of college or university.
Yep. And I am concerned that they could still back out of that equation too.
Right.
Well, yeah, we could hire them in February and they could walk in here on April 1st or 2nd or 3rd and say,
I'm not doing this.
I've got a different
another
job
Yep.
for more pay or in my field or whatever. You'll never stop that.
True.
You know that. So then you go back out to the pool that you had, and if you've hired 10 students, you may go to the 11th that you liked, and if they don't have a job, you can bring them in. But I think what you're really meaning here is that we should get them in there earlier, train them earlier, so they can get out there earlier and alleviate some of the issues. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, I have put a proposal in for 6 of the 12 students to start 3 weeks earlier.
Great. The other question I had was, it's off the back of Councillor Wells' question, and perhaps this is more directed to the CAO, but I think we need to find a mechanism to make some decisions. Well, first off, if the budget, I'm concerned that if the budget had gone the way it was planned back in November and December, this report, I'm assuming, would have had to have been done and incorporated into the ask. So my question is that we may have more pilot projects, and they're all going to need a year or whatever, but it's going to be that budget year. So the results of it aren't going to be till the end of that year. And so the 1 year, to Harry's point, the 1 year pilot program is either A, almost a given that it has to be completed, because if it's a contractor, let's say on the snow side of things, because that would be January 1st, we wouldn't be able to make a decision. And despite the quality of your memo, and again, this is through you to the CAO, it would have been for the financial director if he or she were here or in place, but we need to have a mechanism that these kind of pilot programs can be decided upon prior to the budget year to give approval, or that they need more information after we see it, and we can still get it in a timely fashion. Right. So through you, so two-sided is, I've always worried about that when Peter was doing this, any of these early requests like this before the budget always came with the staff memo, and everybody writes a staff memo differently, and it also is in a template that has the business case analysis, et cetera, et cetera. So A, can we get that changed? And B, how do we deal with these types of requests in the future when they're off the back of a pilot project that needs a year to run and expires too late, perhaps, to change things.
CAO?
That's for your worship to Councillor Bruno. The short answer is get the budget back on schedule. The longer answer is that you're exactly right. The only reason that this report is before you, the only reason is because of the budget delays. So this would not be before council in the form of a staff report typically. This was planned to be in the budget. However, we have such a backlog in our hiring right now. In fact, you just got some emails about some more retirements last week. Another person who's resigned to take a job in Pelham this week or Thursday, I guess. All the students coming on board, and we do all of those interviews during student reading week, that we simply didn't think that we could hire the employee that's necessary to hire. 2 employees, 1 employee? Two
for Grace.
After the budget was approved, but before the grass started to grow and required mowing. So to circumvent that sort of perceived future delay in hiring, we put our heads together, staff and community services, the clerk and I, and said, how can we get an authorization to hire now at the start of February, middle of February, when the budget isn't approved yet? And we said, you know what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to bring a staff report forward asking council to approve it pre-budget, just because it's a long shot, I know. If we had counted on it being on the budget and for whatever reason it wasn't approved in the budget, we would have hired 2 employees and had to lay them off before they even started. So that's exactly the reason we're before you today with this request. That would normally be the request at a budget meeting, is because of just the timing of not having started our budget meetings in December due to staff changes at the senior level of staff in the finance department.
Thank you. And how about the template changes that could be more more template based rather than a staff memo?
Sure. So through your worship to Councillor Bruno, if you're talking specifically about the sort of business case model of pitching a pilot program being converted or showing the success, I think what we're gonna have to do is sort of show the revenue cost, and maybe staff and I can work on this with the new finance director when he or she is appointed, on sort of having a true comparison, apples to apples, of a contract job versus an in-house job. And that does include the cost of future benefits and pension payments. It's not just the hourly wage,
right,
not just the machine time, but it's the legacy cost that one of the council members mentioned that needs to be incorporated in that business case preparation. So leave that with me and the staff of the department that wrote the report and our future director of corporate services, finance.
I don't mean this facetiously, but the fact that we're able to do some things when they're necessary without it going to budget is something may want to use from time to time, or other councillors. And not to be facetious, but sometimes we feel that things are necessary, and I mean this sincerely, that there's a mechanism there that if it meets a certain bar and has the approval of council, that we could do it. Thank you.
Councillor Danch?
Just a question, Mike, through you, Your Honor.
Worship, I'm not a judge. Sorry.
I'm used to saying that.
Can I ask about those charges?
Misdemeanors.
Yeah.
So we're cutting our rose lawns and our smaller parks and whatnot, but when we get into the Hummerston Shoe by my place and stuff like that, we're still going with an outside contractor there, are we not?
No, we did everything in-house last year.
So we've got a piece of equipment that's, well, probably not as huge as what they were using, because I mean, I think one of the problems with that big equipment is it was doing a lousy job, right?
Yeah, it was. We have similar pieces of equipment. We have a similar operation. So it was a 13-foot mower on the back of a tractor, and then we had 2 zero-turns along with the crew. Depending on the park you're speaking of, we probably would have cut majority of that with a zero-turn. And in certain areas, we don't put the larger tractors on our turf areas because they're not good for turf cuts, but in larger, like H.H. Knoll Park, Sunset Park, our larger scale parks, then we use the tractor.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Further questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. 2-minute break, guys. Okay, ready over there, young man? Okay, we're all set to go. Not you, I was talking to the webcaster guy. So we're on item 4, Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Your Worship. Community and Economic Development Department, Parks and Recreation Division, Report 2020-18, subject 2020 Canadian Bass Anglers Federation Cup.
Seconder for this, Councillor Bagu. Councillor Wells.
Through you, Your Worship, to Nicole. I have just a couple questions. First question is, you in the report, this organization has done some similar events in Kingston, Bracebridge, Kawartha Lakes, and Hamilton. I went on to those websites for those communities. I couldn't find anything in regards to those. So could you maybe, do you have any information that demonstrates what they've done with them? So what I'm trying to say is, how does what they're asking us compare to what they asked Bracebridge, for example?
Staff?
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Wells. Trying to think the best way to answer this question. So in terms of promotion, what each one of the asking cities or host cities were recognized within the CBAF's website themselves, and promotional materials through then. Quinton West, I've actually took information from their site themselves, advertising an event, and used some of it in some of the language that we would be looking for promotion of our event. In terms of economic benefits to those communities, I haven't followed up with them to request that type of information, but could if that was the request of council for that to happen. Again, this is a community-based organization, so there are a number of chapters throughout here in the city of Port Colborne. There's 30 local members that are a part of that chapter. So each one of those communities, depending on their involvement with the various marinas, would be the benefits that they would receive from the events. So if the Bracebridge Marina didn't take advantage of hosting these people there and promoting, I don't know if there would be any spillover effect for them. I think it's all in the way we would market ourselves. I think we spoke to some of these things earlier with economic development and tourism in the community, and I think we're realizing what assets we have with the lake and what is bringing people to the community, and I think events like this certainly lay true to that, given the participants ranging from the upper United States and into different areas within the province itself. So I can get more information for you if you would like more, but.
Councillor?
No, Nicole, you don't have to give me any more information. I'll just simplify the question maybe a little bit more. Do you know what they asked Hamilton to donate in the way of dollars and cents to their program or the other facilities? I guess the other cities, municipalities, that was my question.
The requests financially have been on par with the previous asks.
Okay. My second question then comes down to what is our margin on the fuel we sell at the marina?
Specifically, I would have to go back and get that information for you in terms of margins on gas rates. Maybe the CAO may be able to help me with that when it comes to the fees bylaw.
Through your worship to Councillor Wells, I don't have that information at council. I'm not even sure if I'd like to divulge that information in a public council meeting just because of the proprietary nature of it. But what I can commit to do is maybe through the manager, go back tomorrow and prepare an email, find out, email it to council off of the open council agenda so that you have that calculation in your inbox, all of you. Nicole, can we do that? Okay.
Just to make it clear, just to make it a little simpler so that it's not confidential, if we knew what margins were made by the marina last year when they ran the event, that would help. I used just an average of 8.5%, which was posted, a 5-year average, And, you know, just the marina alone, based upon their statement of selling $50,000 of additional fuel, just on that basis, will make the $5,000 back.
Right.
So I was just trying to get a little bit more grasp.
That's good
Okay,
insight.
thank you.
Good, thank you, Counselor. Further questions? All in favor? Oh, sorry. Got a question, Counselor? Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you to staff, are we going to be promoting this event?
Staff?
Like, do we? Yeah, okay.
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Bodnar. Yes, we will be promoting the event. They have not asked for anything in terms of support of it, but I do certainly think that seeing that it is happening at Sugarloaf Marina and you are contributing dollars, I do believe we should spend some efforts in promoting this event.
Okay, I just wondered whether it might be something to try to put through the Tourism Partnership of Niagara, if depending on how we're promoting it, you know, how far afield, because you certainly have all the numbers here that we need to do something like that. So if that could be on your radar to do, we have a meeting this week, I think. I'm just looking at the CAO. Thursday. And we get an idea how soon we'd have to have something in if, we'll ask that question, yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. Counselor Clayla?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Nicole. Anything, Nicole, thanks for doing this. Anything you can do to promote fishing in Port Colborne, I think is wonderful. These fishing tournaments, we lost one over the last couple of years. My sons are both fishermen, as you know. They will go far and wide, days travel to fish, and all of their friends do it as well. And I know the money that they spend, and I know how much money it will bring into our community. And it's great being at the marina and having the fishermen there. It's really, I think it's a real benefit to the city. We're known as being a fishing town. So,
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Bruno?
Thank you, Worship. Just to follow up on what Councillor Wells brought up, in terms of the measurement after the fact, I noted that this is in U.S. funds. I noticed we have a more northern one, Ontario. Do they provide the incentive in U.S. dollars? And in that post-event measurement exercise, I mean, I think Donna would tell you, my son-in-law fishes too. They go to the States, they pay entry fee in the States, and they cash out in U.S. dollars. So it would be interesting to know the demographics of who the participants are at the end of this, to see if the prize did have to be in U.S. dollars or U.S. contribution. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions? Counselor?
just an answer to Councillor Bruno. I think U.S. dollar is always U.S. dollars in the States, but I believe it's always Canadian dollars in Canada, yeah, when they cash out.
That's not what this is saying. This is U.S. dollars.
But I believe that was for the third one, wasn't it? And that one was being held in the States, perhaps, the third one? Yeah.
Through you, Mayor, to Council. Yes, you are correct. The U.S. funds was for the third event. That's because a number of American teams, and it's a challenge against the United States and Canada. Yeah. And I think because they're governed by Major League Bass Association, I don't know what the acronym is, that the dollars are paid out in American funds. But I can reach out to the organizer and certainly find that out for you.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Anything further? All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Item 5, Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Your Worship. Engineering and Operations Department, Operations Division, Report 2020-16, subject Port Colborne Distribution System Annual Inspection.
Can I get a seconder for that? Councillor Beauregard. Councillor Wells.
Through Your Worship, I just wanted to have this one pulled to get recognition for the operational staff, Darlene's team. The annual inspection was very well done. In fact, it was 100%. Some areas for improvement, but I think recognition should go out to Darlene for protecting our water and doing a good job.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions? Councillor Beauregard.
Through Your Worship, I just wanted to add to that. I believe in the report it said 8 years compliance. Has it been 8 years with that? So that's outstanding, and especially in a time where there was an article recently that said something about lead being in water, and that was pretty popular. And to be able to show that no, we're 100% compliant, we're good, that just can calm some fears if anyone does have any fears. So thanks.
Okay. Thank you, council. Seeing nothing further, all those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Any notices of motion? This meeting is adjourned. We'll call the council portion of this meeting to order. Introduction of addendum items, Madam Clerk.
There are none this evening.
Confirm the agenda, mover and a seconder. Councillor Clayliff, Councillor Danch. Any questions? All in favor? Unanimous. Disclosures of interest. I have 2 minutes of the special meeting of Council 03-20 held January 27th, 2020. Regular meeting of Council 04-20 held on January 27th, 2020. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Councillor Wells, Councillor Bruno. Questions to either of those? Councillor?
Through your worship, in one of the minutes, I forget which one it was, my pecuniary interest, it says the reasoning behind it, there was an or that was there, but it should be and, I believe. I need to find it before I can give it to you.
Madam Clerk?
Through the mayor, that's fine, I'll make the correction.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All in favor? Unanimous. Any items requiring separate discussion? Mover and a seconder for all the items, Bruno and Bagu. Any questions? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Proclamations. We have one proclamation, the Fresh Air Fund, March 20th of 2020. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Councillor Clayliff, Councillor Danch. Questions? All in favor? Unanimous. Minutes of boards, commissions, and committees. I have 3 sets of minutes. Minutes of the Port Colborne Transit Advisory Committee of October 9th, 2019. The Port Colborne Historical Marine Museum, November 19th, 2019. And the Environmental Advisory Committee, November 13th, 2019. Move those in block. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Wells, Councillor Bagu. Questions on any of those? All in favor? Unanimous. Madam Clerk, bylaws.
There are 2 bylaws this evening. Bylaw 6744-108-19. This bylaw is a 3rd reading only. And the second bylaw is 6759-09-20.
Mover and a seconder. Councillor Wells, Councillor Bagu. Any questions to either bylaw? All those in favor? Unanimous. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen.